they're in a good window, right, for trying to get this done. ZywOo, Spinks, and Magis, this will be the star trio of the team, and hopefully the trio of the team in the future. And then you have the leadership backbone with all the experience, the major trophies, the same with Sonic, the coach. There's a lot of things to like about Vitality. But at the same time, I tweeted this the other day, and is this a cause for concern for anybody here? Vitality with this roster are yet to play FaZe.
Yeah.
So is that a cause for concern? Because we haven't seen them tested against who we consider the best team in the world. Like,
add some fun to your space with Xtrfy, designed in Sweden with focus on quality products built on experience. You're looking at Project 4, their 4th generation of products with super cool colorways to stand out, with matching sets to satisfy with a solid B4 bungee, lightweight ergonomic M4 mouse. The K4 keyboard is fantastic, all of which are performance focused, and finish it off with colorful GP4 mouse mats that are bold in design and smooth on the surface. The retro theme in particular has got the feels. Complete your setup with Xtrfy. No regrets guaranteed.
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on bitskins.com.
Your bet, your game.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to HLTV Confirmed. We're live right now. This is kind of like a soft entry into the sea. We brought our boat up to the ramp, and it's nice and gentle. It's a beautiful day out there. There's no stress. Things are going to go calmly, and we're going to have some adult conversations. But as I've just said, you're back here. HLTV Confirmed. It's live, and we've got the regular crew. Prof, give everybody a wave. What type of plant is that in the background? Is it a real plant or a fake plant?
It's a real plant, but it came with the apartment. I don't know much about it. Doesn't have a name yet. It's just there and it's surviving so far. Actually kind of looks like I need to water it.
Yes, that's what I was
thinking. Looks like
thinking.
I need to water it. Yeah,
You do.
Can I do it right now? I'm gonna do it now.
Yeah, you do that, and we'll continue forward here. Striker, oh, look at this. Look how long the cable is. That's one of the things.
Xtrfy.
Yeah, so you don't get cables longer than this. It is. I don't like what I'm seeing, but I'm enjoying it. And there's a Roomba, which is a brand name for basically a little baby robot vacuum cleaner. I had one of those. It was like some brand that I can't pronounce the name, and now it's broken. It only lasted me 6 months. But it's good to see Prof watering his plants. Striker, do you have any plants you need to water?
This one, but it doesn't need watering. You just water it like
what type of plant
once.
is that?
It's like a type of bamboo, basically.
Does it get any natural light? Do you have to move it next to a window?
No, it doesn't. It actually survives like in pretty much anywhere. Like that's why I have that plant, because it's, I can be gone for 2 weeks and it'll survive. It's not going to die on me. So that's the only plant that I can actually, keep alive.
Okay. All right. That's good news. Mahone, you're the guest this evening. You're the man joining us. Are you a plant expert? But you don't have any greenery behind you right now.
No,
none at all.
Just a blank wall. I've got nothing.
Is there any plants close to your surroundings that you can, touch, maybe water, maybe,
No.
None at all.
I'm definitely not a plant guy. Definitely
no. I'm touching no grass.
Have you considered cacti?
No, I haven't considered any plants at all. So
okay,
this is a foreign discussion to me.
Man,
maybe you can. Maybe you can after this discussion. You take some time. Think about plants.
A bit of greenery around the home, it can go a very long way. But one thing that I didn't do here was thank our very lovely sponsors for making all this possible. So I just want to quickly shout out N1Bet. Remember to gamble responsibly. Bitskins, and of course Xtrfy. We shouted out their headphone cable, which is extremely long on these headphones.
Very long.
That's a positive if you need to water your plant. But Mahone, you're introduced now. We've got you on the show. Maybe we just see what you've been up to lately, mate. If people are paying attention to the broadcast, they will have seen your lovely face doing the telestrator segments over there at Blast. You also did some content for ESL, and you've been on some desks as well, mate. So you're a full-fledged analyst right now. How's that lifestyle treating you?
It's been very quick. I quite honestly, everything has gone so quickly. First event I did was for Blast in April. And then now it's just I basically do all the Blast events and then an ESL desk here for the RMR, as well as the Kjaerbye segments at the start of the year. Can't forget about that one. Yeah, it's been quite crazy. I couldn't have imagined that, like, from where I started with YouTube to getting to this point now. Unbelievable.
Speaking of YouTube, you still doing it, or is it a bit hard to manage it with everything that's going on at the moment?
It's a bit hard to manage it at the moment just because there's so many new things I'm doing nowadays. I'm just trying my best to prepare to be as good as I can be on these broadcasts. And then I always think that YouTube will be back for me eventually when I can really put some effort into it. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, fair enough. I remember we had a conversation before you were doing these like Katowice videos, right? And obviously something like similar vein is like always trying to learn. Well, and that's the thing. It's like learn how to communicate to the community succinct information from an analytical point of view that might be interesting for them to take into a game. That's a mouthful. It's also like quite difficult to like point out these things in a match, right? Because I watched the stuff you do, and the one you pointed out the other day, it was Inferno. I forgot who the teams were, but it was the layering of flashes that you were pointing out on this AX queue on Inferno.
Yeah.
And those details right there, it's great to have those broken down because in the middle of the match, you know, we can't pause and go, hey, let's rewind and look at this from fucking 600 different angles and whatnot. Those details get missed. So I think you're doing God's work in that department. Has that been a learning curve in itself? You know, how you want to convey that information?
Not so much just because of how much I've done it with YouTube and stuff like that. I think more so the difficulty for me still is trying to do it live and doing it with such little time in between. Like, for example, that round that you're talking about, you know, it's like I have to kind of record, edit the whole thing, upload it to the TV and try to break down the entire presentation and do that in a span of 20 minutes, sometimes even less. I think that's really where the difficulty lies for me right now.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's been, I'd say a lot of the groundwork for me has already been done with YouTube and especially working with NIP as well. It's just more so portraying it in the right way for production.
I want to let Prof and Striker jump in here, but I remember when I was doing similar things and I would edit, and I did a lot of this when Henry and Alex were like, we were doing like the TriCast thing. One of the issues with it as well is like when you're trying to pick a round, you have to try and pick a round that's kind of early on in a game that you can then edit together for the end of the game to then get into the segment. And then that round, it might not be worth anything. Like it doesn't end up, and you're like, fuck, I just put all this work into something and now it's kind of wasted. So it's nice when that round stays as important as it was when you go, fuck, I want to take that one. That's one of the keys right there. Striker, Prof, you got anything you want to jump in with here about this side of Mahone?
Yeah, I think just for people watching, obviously you played some CS and then you kind of got known for the YouTube analyst stuff. Then you went to work with NIP as an analyst, but a different kind of analyst, and now like a third type of analyst on broadcast live, right? Yeah. I think what people might be interested in is like how do you get to where you are right now? Like in short, what were the key things to you kind of finding some success?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess where do I start with this? Obviously, I played the game a little bit. Played in North America, played a bit of ESA, played some collegiate as well. Made it to MDL, but by the time I got there, I was pretty burnt out from the game, and I was already at the point where I was like getting kind of old. Don't feel like I can do this, so I just quit. And after that, like about a year later, kind of just thought like all the knowledge that I kind of accumulated from that time that I played CS, I was just like, I feel like somebody out there is going to appreciate this, people who might be playing in intermediate or main even. So I just made some YouTube videos, and then just over time I got better at them, and then just started learning about the game more. Honestly, every video I make, I learn so much about the game, and it's not just like I already know this from the beginning. It's more so as I'm editing it, as I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it, that's where the understanding really comes from. And as I began to do that, that's how my YouTube channel got noticed. That's how teams like NIP were reaching out to me. And after I decided to leave NIP, that's how I guess I kind of got into this broadcasting stuff, thanks to, talking to people like Chad, Launders, and then eventually getting the gigs I do now.
Answer your question, Prof?
Yeah.
I'll make sure you're happy, mate. I want to make sure you're happy these days, Prof. I haven't seen a smile on your face enough these days. I want to see it from ear to ear. So I want to make sure we're hitting all the bases. Striker, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask what kind of a player were you? Because, considering the job that you're doing now, it seems like you must have been the guy who just like was trying to come up with all these strats for your team to try and showing it to them and stuff like that? Were you always that guy?
I would like on the teams I played in, like obviously I did not play at a high level, but of the teams I played in, I probably did a bit of everything. Like I was the in-game leader at one point, the opper, supportive player. Probably the type of player I haven't really been is like the entry, which is why I don't know if you guys notice with my segments, but whenever I talk about like the entry and like the pathing he takes, I personally find that so interesting because it's stuff that I never really thought about. Whereas I think other people out there who are more of that entry typer or the entry fragger type might appreciate. So yeah, I think it's just more so I've gotten exposure to a lot of things during my time playing and then just kind of translating that into what I see the pros do. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Do you have issues? Because I have this still to this day, and it comes into the way that I try and frame things. But it's like, we get to see everything doing our work, right? And there's a lot of broad assumptions that start happening, like a lot of hindsight Harry's going on, right? And like I when I try and convey the information I am either during the cast or back in the analyst desk segments, sometimes hard to like just go, yeah, this is definitively the case. Like how do you deal with that kind of stuff? Do you just go, hey, this is what we saw, so this is the likely outcome? Because there's another thing in Counter-Strike is talking about game theory. Like that's something which on a deep level, I haven't really done that with a lot of people since I was playing. That's another thing that you when you go in nitty gritty and you're talking about like a play you just made, because when you have teammates or you have opponents that you're sparring against all the time, maybe you get chatting about that type of stuff. I kind of miss those conversations.
These conversations are tough, but to answer your question, I think the main thing for me, whenever it comes to reviewing games or even just trying to create things for broadcasts or whatever it may be, is just to try to stick with a single point. So, for example, over the course of a half, if you notice that like each round the team is taking this part of the map and they're able to get this kill, and just try to stick with that thing and just see like how the other teams are adapting to it. That's normally what I do because it's so easy to get caught up in all the details of certain duels and certain fights, but I think the main thing is really just trying to find and pinpoint like one common theme throughout a round or the half that really makes the difference between why a team won and why a team lost. That's what I try to do. And that especially works for when you're working with a team, because when you're working the team, like the players and I guess everybody involved can get their own thoughts about why the round was lost. But then if you can kind of cut it down into one central, okay, we didn't get banana control here, hence the other team was able to do X, Y, Z. What can we do to prevent that next time? The conversation needs to boil down to that point and not like, okay, I lost this duel here towards Arch, which meant that these nades here were lost, which meant that X, Y, Z, because that's too far down a path.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there. All right. Well, I guess this is a lot of the conversations we're going to be having tonight is about the major and all the good stuff, and maybe we can get into some of that game theory type conversation. Now, gentlemen, Prof Striker, before we jump into the recent news, because this is the thing, we are going to have a lot to talk about tonight. Do we have anything else we want to ask Mahone now, or do we want to see if we save some stuff? Maybe we have some questions a little bit later for the playtime section, if we make it there.
I think we're good. I just went to check his HLT profile because I'm getting old. I don't want to play anymore. And I realized you're 28. I thought you're like 23 or some shit. So that was just my takeaway there.
Yeah, it was at a time where I just graduated school as well, and I started full-time work around that time too. So it was just like I looked at hours of other people who are also competing. I was just like, I just can't do it. I just don't want to. That's what it boiled down to.
And you know what they say, those that can't do, teach. And my nickname is Prof, so it's self-burn as well.
It's sometimes nice to be on this side. There's no stress. This is what I like with this side of the fence. There's no winning and losing. I'm sure you would have had the winning and losing feeling during NIP, Mahone, right? You that one right there is like, fuck, I told him to do this and it didn't work. Fuck.
Yep.
Yeah, that you don't have to worry about that now. That's all right. This is the fun part of this side of the fence.
Here's one question, right? Like now that you mentioned that, obviously these jobs are like quite different to like everything that you've done. You go from YouTube where you're just basically like focusing on kind of like picking out cool shit that you can show to people and not necessarily have to worry too much about like how important this information will be to a team, but then you go into an IP and then you have to focus on other teams' tendencies and things like that. How quickly did you have to learn from going from kind of like this one role to another? And especially, being in a team, and where there's a lot more, I guess, attention to detail.
I don't know. I think for me, the main difference was just learning how to use tools when I became an analyst, like for a team, just because the turnaround time to try to figure out teams' tendencies is very quick. Sometimes it's like, sometimes you get a night or a day in between. And a lot of that kind of comes down to just like your understanding of the game and just thinking about, okay, if I was a player in this match, what would be useful for me to actually know that I can actually do something about? Because sometimes I think some people can kind of get lost in the weeds a little bit about like certain tendencies, but what it can kind of come down to is just letting a player know or letting a team know it's like, hey, these are 3 4 things that are very like specific that they do, and this is a way to counter, or this is like what they like to do. um I think a lot of being able to understand like what's valuable to a team and what's not is just based on, I guess, like your game knowledge and just knowing like what things are more unique to teams. Because if you just tell a team that's like, okay, this team throws top mid window smoke, well, every team does that. But if you tell them, hey, this team throws like the middle of mid smoke, like the one that connects the top mid and the middle one, that's actually something important to tell a team. I think that's where the difference lies. And you only understand which points those are if you kind of seen a lot of teams and you understand how the game works at a high level.
Okay. All right. I
Yeah.
like that.
Also, pattern spotting and like what
Yeah.
you can take advantage of and things like that is a big part of it too.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess even just some of the basics that people offload now is like if you have an analyst that you trust, you go, okay, listen, just come back with the basic scouting report of these guys' CT setups on this map, right? That's work that players and coaches used to do a couple years ago that now they can just send out, and then you go, okay, all we need to do, yeah, this guy. If they want to look deeper, obviously, we know a lot of players watch demos. I'm rambling. Let's jump into the recent news. Lucas, roll the bumper. All right, we're back, and I'm going to get my phone right now. I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes. It's 8:15. There's so much stuff with the major that I want to talk about, and there's so little I want to say a lot about these roster changes. So we're going to set a 15-minute timer, right? And then at the end of that 15-minute timer, we're going to move on, right?
Yeah.
But we'll start with the changes, and I'll throw these out there. And if there's anything that anybody feels is important that they want to say about any of these changes, feel free. But a lot of them just seem so new or so expected to me that it is what it is. So, Prof, would you like to kick us off as I start the timer?
With shox, Jesus.
You kick us off with shox, the French legend.
Yeah, that is the biggest. This like insane. It's insane how much, especially like going through like some of our like traffic stats recently, just being curious about like what people read, what people don't read, how much these like older legends attract attention and
Just with the name value, right?
name value. It doesn't matter what's going on. Like shox is someone that realistically hasn't been in top form for almost a year now. Like news with him, with like snacks, with Edward in a show match, or like Markelov. These are the news that everyone clicks on. These are like far outshine like an interview with, I don't know, fucking NAVI on average. Like it's crazy how these things work. And that's why this news, even though objectively it's like water is wet, wow, shox played bad in a bad team, he's no longer in this team, it feels like, why the fuck would we even talk about this? But people want to hear about shox, and is he gonna make another, I don't know, fucking last dance in France, which in itself is probably not worth even talking about.
But that's the most interesting part of this conversation, right? Like, I didn't read the details of what the situation is with Apeks, but it says allowed to explore other options. So I'm sure that there's some form of a buyout or some type of agreement here that has to be come to between that org and whoever he goes to, right? But the most interesting part about this conversation, because let's say 6 to 10 months ago, the conversation was about him going to Liquid, and that probably being one of his last teams. The fact he's 30 and a chance, there to make a run with a team that started some stars in it, he can be, that backbone. Well, that didn't work out. Hasn't really received glowing reviews, but hasn't, been shut on. So we don't really know too much of what happened there. But now with this Apeks situation, you follow it up. It's not great, right? This is a team of established names mainly who struggled. They went to the equivalent of an I-Series LAN in America, Fragadelphia, and they couldn't win that, right? So, and I know that me saying that comes across harsh, but that's the reality of this. And Apeks, as we know it, an org that was shoving out money. So look, they need to kind of work out what direction they're going. We can talk about that when they make some moves. But this last dance situation for French Counter-Strike striker is the only interesting point of all of this. Do you think that there's an opportunity, maybe not just like shox and like, I saw Pimp make a ridiculous tweet. He's just doing it for interaction. I understand that, guys. I know that it's not serious. Like, we all know that it's not serious, but like something like that, maybe it's a blend, like kind of what we see with Imperial on one side and Zero Zero Nation on the other. Like, can you see something like that, Striker, as an option for shox and the MBKs and the Aminex and everybody to try and sort their shit out now? I saw Maka got benched today over there at Falcons, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, quite frankly, that seems like the only way out for shox at this point, because I mean, obviously, even when he left Liquid, we were already talking about like, where the hell does he go now? Like, no top 20 team is going to be interested, not even like, maybe like a fringe top 30 team like we saw with Apeks, sure, but like, this is an old guy, that's kind of beyond his prime, and he's not necessarily like in the in-game leader role, because we all know what the issues were there when he was doing that on and off in G2 and like previous French rosters, and that creating a lot of clashes. So I'm sure nobody really liked that idea of just taking on shox as like their veteran to build around. So that's kind of the issue that I see with where shox can even go now. And like it seems like the French scene is his only way that he can still kind of like stay relevant. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like a last dance situation. It could just be, him just bringing on some of the younger talent, maybe like one more older guy along with him, and build something new, and hopefully help the French scene rise up again. That's the only way.
Yeah, I think that has to be a bit of a coming together with a lot of these names. Now, Mahone, I'm going to do this to you.
He's going to do it to you. He's going to do it to you. Are you ready?
I think he's out.
He paused for a dramatic effect.
Damn.
I was just going to say, though, that I just want to see shox back again in a French-speaking team, just to see if the language change had anything to do with it, because I think some people kind of underestimate how big of a change that is sometimes for some players, where you kind of have to translate your thoughts into a second language fairly quickly sometimes. Like, in conversation is one thing, but actually being able to play it, and in those intense moments where it's like a split second, those are like when communication really matters. So I'd like to see him back in the French team, see what he can do there, because back in the days, like 2013, 2014, shox is insane, and I want to see him get back to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's fairly unrealistic, obviously, for a guy to just like suddenly return to his prime like 7 years later, or whatever it is exactly. So that doesn't seem very plausible. I mean, Chad's power went out. He's just saying, so I guess we're just gonna have to roll without him. I mean, we can just move on for now and see if he's going to be able to go back.
Hopefully it gets resolved automatically. But yeah,
right.
So TLDR, shox to France. That's our call right now.
All right, Kjaerbye leaving Endpoint. That's the next one on the docket, right?
Bro, I don't.
Another one of these
also
situations,
like,
right?
Why are people so excited? Why are people ever excited about him going to Endpoint? Okay, he's coming back, so like that's nice. We can be like a bit of wishful thinking, but there wasn't anything there. And from what I know, I think they also mentioned there's like personal reasons why he left the team. So it wasn't like he was kicked. It wasn't like he was awful, but it's not like he light the server up on fire either. So that's why I find it hilarious when people like talk. I know they're kind of joking, but like I saw so many of these Kjaerbye Astralis comments that I was like, I don't know what to think. What do you think, Danny? Is he going to Astralis?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we need a Danish last dance kind of thing too, Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much opinion on him leaving Endpoint. I mean, I think it was a good run for him. I don't really know where he's going next, if he's going to continue to play or whatever. I don't have much to say on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good look for him, honestly, because obviously, he left and it was kind of in the middle of a lot of motivation issues, and then he comes back. I'm so motivated. I want to play this game so much, and like I've rediscovered my love for it. Has like this big return, right? And then like whatever it is, when did he join exactly? Like 4 months, 5 months later, he leaves for personal issues. So that's just a bad look for a guy who just returned from retirement. So again, like this is a very difficult position to be in if you want to keep going, keep playing. If these personal issues are something that he can get resolved, is he actually even going to come back, or is somebody even going to be interested in a guy who lasted 4 months after his retirement on a team for relatively mysterious reasons? I mean, maybe it's something entirely legitimate, something going on with his family and has nothing to do with motivation or the reason that he retired in the first place. But for somebody who doesn't know, who doesn't see into what exactly it is that happened, like they're not going to be particularly interested in somebody like that.
Yeah, the optics aren't that great. I think the next one on the list was Salsol, essentially just Movistar Rider making changes. I think them making changes, considering their results, actually the pre-break results are super great. Then they lost on Pius, made changes, and then since then it's been pretty dire and didn't qualify for the RMR, didn't do anything at EPL. Like we expected changes, but like I think the debate right now is like, was Deaths the one to remove, or like NAVI, who had like significantly worse stats? So this is maybe Mahone, if you how much you watch them. What do you think about the removal of our boy Deaths here?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't watched Movie Star Riders very much. The most was just during Cologne. I just wish that we could have seen that roster hit like a peak, because it seemed like after their good result at Cologne, it was just we don't get to see Sun Pius anymore. He moves to Ents, and then I mean, my expectations after they removed Sun Pius was like I didn't think they were going to be good. Like I think they lost a big piece from him. So seeing them make more changes is unsurprising, but I mean, maybe you got to do what you got to do sometimes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the problem I see a little bit is that this is Southall is a guy who had like a really good period at the beginning of a Badlands, but then he just fell off a cliff for a reason that I don't know. Like obviously, I've watched maybe a handful of matches of Badlands, so I can't really say what happened there if he had a rule change, like because they've had some lineup changes, like extended lineups, like more than 5 people and things like that. So I imagine there was there must have been some changes that affected him, because it was just like suddenly like he went from a guy who was just putting up like 115 ratings on a consistent basis over like 6 months to just dropping into the red all the time. And I don't know why that happened exactly. But I mean, Movistar definitely must have seen something to make this move, especially this quickly after just undergoing the Opera change, right? So it feels like something that they've definitely spotted in him, and otherwise they maybe wouldn't have jumped on a move this fast. So I'm hoping that this is a guy that will show that kind of talent that we saw from him like earlier in the Medline stint.
Yeah, and I mean, aside from that, like the other roster changes, like K23 Force both like dropped 2 players. Uh, I don't think we need to like go into specific details, but it just seems to be shaping up as a kind of a big CIS shuffle coming up. One Win also changed their IGL, so Lollipop is now IGLing, which I feel like could be just a setup to change some of the other players in the lineup as well. We saw Entropic kind of benching their whole roster, and I think there was another team. Did someone else?
There was
I don't think so. Maybe, but essentially that's already like 8 players there. The 8 or 9 players that are up for grabs, and seems like after the major, depending on how the major teams go, there's going to be a big kind of shuffle in the CIS scene. I don't know. This is also a question for either of you. Do you have anyone from the kind of leftovers that didn't qualify for the major of the players that you're kind of excited about? Our mate Deco over there. He actually did quite well at the RMR, I think.
Yeah, hit a couple games for sure.
Yeah.
What was the question exactly?
Are you excited about any of the players? Do you see them like? Is there anyone you want to see at the big stages, essentially?
Like a bigger team, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was always like kind of like a lot of hype around Lollipop just before he joined this team. I don't think he's necessarily lived up to that in One Win. So I mean, that's a guy that's not been quite as interesting as he was in the Nemiga times. But other than that, I can't think of anybody at the moment.
Yeah.
It just feels like Jerry needs a chance, man. From
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I was just going to say, I think it's pretty interesting that this shuffle is happening in the CIS region, just because I feel like they breed so many players all the time anyways. That's like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's just some newer player on the block that we don't know about that's going to show up in the next like 3 to 6 months, and where he's just owning everybody. So I don't know, whatever they got in the water over there, they need that in North America and Europe as well.
I mean, they have a hell of a lot of people.
Yeah. I also feel like Patsy is one of those examples. Like he didn't really come out of nowhere, but he was like playing in the academy, played a bit in Spirit in that like 6-man rotation that they had for a while. And it was nothing special until like this lineup, the last lineup actually with Dexter, where he's just like, okay, this guy's like crazy aggressive, but also crazy good at the same time. And he's, for me, super exciting. I think wonderful Deco Before that was Alien, or all of these operas that were like pretty good consistently, didn't really come out of nowhere. Maybe for like tier 1 only watchers, it's like, oh, where did this team come from? And they've been grinding like 700 maps in a year, playing in like all of these pineapple cups and everything. It's like it didn't really come out of nowhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's like some talent that would be nice if they got together, but we always talk about somebody like Xtrfy, for example. Like, let's say you just keep Jerry and Xtrfy from fours, then just get Deco in there, and then see
add a
see what happens.
Forester, and now we have like a banging lineup, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing to add. I think there is something to be said about teams that grind a lot of officials, though. I personally feel like all these tier 2, tier 3 teams, like their rate of progression is just way quicker than tier 1 teams, just simply because they play so many officials that it's just like, how do you not get better after playing so much? That's how I feel about it. Whereas like tier 1 teams, it's like they play fewer tournaments and obviously they're much more higher impact, but it's harder to progress unless you're putting yourself in those kind of high pressure moments and things that matter type of situations in practice. And that might be one of the hardest things for some teams, where it's like they can't make that transition necessarily.
Is that like an observation from your like analyst, team analyst side?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
So when you played more games, you really felt the impact of what you did, and when you just played practice, it was like whatever.
Yeah, there's a tendency for the team, like just as a whole, to kind of feel like, okay, well, it was just practice, even if it was like a scrim that you played to win or whatever like that, it still doesn't have that same, you still don't get that same feeling of losing or winning in the same way. You don't get the rewards of your efforts. It's just practice. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And risk taking and things like that is not going to be the same. It's just people are going to make different moves, depending on exactly what you're talking about, the pressure. And so, if you play in practice, without any pressure, and then how you have to make what would have been a hard decision, in a real match, you make it in practice, but then maybe you don't make it in the official match because you haven't tried it before, or you're too worried about not getting like dropping out of the major or whatever. Like, it's just going to be different, right?
Yeah, just second guessing yourself. Like, you might be like, okay, well, we did this in practice. Like, is this the time to actually do it? Well, I don't know, maybe. Right? So,
yeah, that's why some teams suck when it matters most. Talking about teams that don't suck when it matters most. Let's go into the N1 moment. We have a short clip to play. Lucas, just tell us when when it's on, because we don't have the preview right now. Essentially, what we picked for this week's highlight was the kind of funny, simple signing video, kind of cute. Essentially, just their way of announcing the 3-year extension.
That's not the one.
No,
what did we play?
He played the last one.
I was about to interrupt you, saying that was not the video. It was last week's N1 moment, also about Simple, also being a cute video.
Yeah, that's true.
But this is actually the one.
The N1.
The N1
moment. Do we need to shut up? I don't think so.
I don't.
I mean, not really.
I think there's not a lot of talking, but kind of cute. Essentially, simple extended. I think for me, it wasn't also big news. What did you guys make of it first time, Danny? When you saw this, any first thoughts?
No, this is actually going to be the first time I've seen this. I was aware that he signed again, but I actually didn't see the video, so this will be my first time.
It's cute. It's very short.
Also,
yeah, that's pretty cute. That is pretty cute.
The ending of
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nice. Realistically, simple extending for Navi, I think that surprises no one, considering their form over the last 2 years. I feel like 2020 pre-pandemic, they went Katowice, and then the pandemic is kind of on and off, not the best. They come out of that as the best team in the world, win the major, win a bunch of tournaments, become the #1 team in the world, Grand Slam. So they pretty much, I don't think anyone spoke about Simple leaving Navi in 2 years. I think that's kind of where it is. So it's not a big surprise, but who do you think is the bigger winner here? Simple, Navi? Who won more?
Navi. I think Navi won more here. I think there might be some orgs who would be willing to open their wallets for a player like him.
Yeah, I mean that's for sure.
I'm actually curious if there was like, if anyone was aware that his contract was going out like at some point soon. Was there any offers? Like, I'd really like to know if anyone, you know, reached out and was like, yeah, we're gonna offer you 100K a month or something. which is like realistically, I feel like how
It
much
would be possible, yeah.
Yeah, it must be possible. Like in terms of like what other salaries are. Maybe it's hard to monetize that much, but like he has insane viewership and marketability right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say like just it's not just Navi, you know, that have like so much pull. It's simple himself, you know, and like I'm sure from even just like jersey sales and things like that, they'd be able to make up quite a lot of that salary because he is just like one of the most popular players in the world and one of the best, right? And like the last 4 years, so. That's always going to have a lot of pull. I mean, I wasn't surprised for sure. It's just like that kind of a situation where you can't even imagine him being somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's been there for, what is it now, 6 years, I think, right? Since 2016, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Like late 2016 when he joined. So like after that long, like how can you even think about, you know, leaving that team, you know, at the moment, especially at a time when what was this crazy stat that they've been in the playoffs in the last 24 events or something crazy like that? Like,
yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, that's the kind of consistency, you know, that you don't get basically anywhere else. Like you look at any other team, like nobody's had that kind of consistency for the last 3 years. No way. No, you can't find anybody.
That's wild. Yeah. That's
so
wild.
like, of course, that's a good move for Simple too, because I mean, he has played there. He's always going to have like a lot of support and, you know, Electronic and some of these key people that have been there for a while and that he can rely on as well. You know, so it seems like the perfect partnership.
Yeah. That kind of ends up our recent news. I don't know how Chad's timer is doing, but we can we can wrap up with Skinionaire and then go into like kind of the
definitely
No, we didn't overshot. We didn't overshot.
We overshot it a little bit. It was like
no. Okay, let's go to the Skinionaire. Do you have it ready, Lucas? The guy that's saying we're taking too much time. You don't have it ready. You don't have it ready, don't you?
Yes, I have it.
It's ready. Okay. So we got the Skinionaire. Danny, did you watch? Do you know what's going on? Do I need to explain it?
You need to explain it a little bit. I think I know what this is.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially 5 questions, 3 answers. You pick ABC, and each correct answer moves the thing. And essentially, depending on how well you do, we get a better skin to give away to the viewers. Viewers type Bitskins in chat, and then that's it.
Okay.
And if you need some help, Striker can help. Just send the link, Lucas, so we can see the questions. And yeah, you can also press the answers. Danny.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes, I have it open. Yes, I am ready.
Okay. What team of the following has the lowest average age? Is it 9Z, 00 Nation, or Furia?
It's got to be 9Z, right?
I would say so.
I'm locking it in.
There we go. Quick and to the point. 9Z. Correct answer is 9Z. I think they're second or third youngest team. Like under 21 for sure.
Yeah. They have a lot of young guys.
There's Spirit is 20.5 and then Sprout is 20.6 and then I think 9Z is like 20.9 or something like that.
Let's go. This team can't drink in the US.
True, actually.
Next question.
But doesn't matter
now. Which country has the most players competing in Rio? Is it USA, Brazil, or Denmark?
Ooh, I feel like I saw this somewhere, but like I don't remember. It's between either Denmark or Brazil, right? Oh, there's a lot of Brazilian teams. Are there really? I feel like I've been influenced by all the tournaments I've done. Like the America's RMR had like
3 Brazilian teams, yeah.
Yeah, the America's RMR had so many Brazilian teams, and then Black Showdown had so many Brazilian teams as well. Which country? I think.
Striker, do you want to help?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's Denmark. I'm pretty sure
I think
like
it's
Denmark 17
well.
and then Brazil 15 or something.
Yeah. It's just I feel like there's so many teams that were competing for a spot in Brazil, but a lot of them didn't make it. So I'm saying Denmark.
Denmark.
We're doing it. 2 for 2. Moving to the third one. Who had the best finish at any major out of the following players? Is it ZywOo, Spinks, or Nexa?
Easy one.
Got me Nexa, right?
Locking it in straight. Easy, very easy one. Fourth question. Excluding Rio, how many CSGO majors took place outside of Europe?
Oh, okay. So there's Columbus, right? That's one. There's Atlanta.
2.
That's 2. And then there's Boston. So that's 3. So
There we go. Quick and
Easy
easy.
enough.
Danny's nailing it.
Nice.
And one last question. Which team has Maxter signed up as a sub for Rio?
That was
Is
quick.
it NIP? Answer correct. And I actually made this question absolutely forgetting that you worked for NIP. So this doesn't really make a lot of sense. But do you actually know the guy, or do you just
No,
he wasn't
I've just seen
there
his
in your
name.
time? Yeah.
No, he wasn't even there during my time, but I've just seen his name. So I was like, yeah, this is he might have been somebody that we looked into before. So he might have been like on a list of players or something like that. So I just knew he was Swedish. Has to be NIP.
There you go. Easy. Who got the
KLVH.
following since 2021? Congrats. Someone's gonna reach out. I don't know who it is. It just works. Everything just works in this company. That's
Yeah, it might just be me.
Might be you on a smart. Okay, so we don't have a bumper. Do we roll ads now? No, we don't need to do that. We're gonna do that later. I'm interim hosting. Just don't be too upset. I'm not great at this. We were talking about the showdown. We were actually talking about the showdown earlier because you worked it. You did the weatherman stuff, which some of it was pretty cool. I saw like some of it really popped up on Twitter for some reason, which is interesting. Saw the double nades from who was it? Oh, from our boy Sangal, my boy Corey. He used to play Adria tournaments. He's like half Serbian or something. So shout out to Corey. He's been doing really well. Actually been pretty good for a really long time. Essentially showcased the double nades on Inferno mid that they got a kill on Big on Searson. Really cool stuff. What is let's just start there. What did you find most exciting from the showdown so far?
Fluxo. I was actually really impressed by how well they played. I knew they were good coming in, but I didn't think they would show the form that they had. And specifically Lucaozy, that guy's insane, man. Honestly, he does so many things well, and as a rifler as well, just how aggressive he gets, and just some of the small details he does when he kind of scales a site, knows what to clear, kind of knows his timings as well, uses his teammates' utility perfectly. I really feel like the next year or something like that, he's gonna be like on a top Brazilian team, probably, and he could even be the star of Brazil. That's how I feel just watching him.
The star in Brazil.
Yes, the star. Not just a star. I think he's going to be the star. That's my bold prediction.
Can you compare him to some of the like more known European players? Is there someone that he reminds you of?
I feel like he, in some way, kind of reminds me of like a blend between Axel and Nico in a way, just like with how smooth they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be only
weird to
better if you
describe it.
say like blend of the ZywOo and Simple. It's like it's like Axel and Nico. That's a compliment.
It's hard to say like who he really replicates like for somebody who's like in the EU scene, but it's just I don't know, it's just the way he plays. It looks like he makes a lot of correct decisions. He looks very complete. Like I'm just more so impressed by like how complete he already looks despite him being kind of newer to the scene.
Yeah, and this is a guy on the fourth best team in Brazil at the moment. You know? So that's the coolest part, I think, out of everything, because you know, there's what you were saying earlier. You know, with the CIS region, Brazil is kind of like the second coming of that, where we just like constantly see like new players popping off, and obviously, you know, some of them do end up making it to the top, but now we only have Furia, so there's not that many spots, and so there's just this like battle for who's even going to be the second best in the region, and Fluxo is like the latest team to join that fight, basically, but they didn't really have that much time leading up to the major, so obviously, you know, they just weren't really ready to qualify, but suddenly they did for for Blast, which is kind of crazy to be honest to me, just because of the other names that we had. Obviously, Complexity just not making it out. EG, they were Fluxo beat EG on the way, right?
Yeah, as well, like just to add on Lucaozy, that point, I think Pimp mentioned on the desk for Blast, he said that like he's the only person who has like as high of a T-side rating as he does. Like he's like the highest T-side rated player out of everybody. And although like he doesn't play against the best competition, I think that's still like a pretty big achievement to have. The fact that you can be so effective on the T side, because it's not easy. Like a lot of the top players that you see, like when you compare their ratings, looking at the CT side compared to the T side, a lot of people excel definitely on the CT side, but there's a much smaller list of people who actually do well on the T side. And when I say doing well, I just mean like above 1.05 rating. So
I think I mean that it's, for context, that is actually high for T side these days. Like it's quite rare for people to even break 1.00, even for people who are like reasonable, like star level, because a lot of it just comes from CT side a lot of the time. So that is quite high.
I think if you go and look at the IEM Rio profiles that we did, where we have the infographic for every team, and you have the CT and T side rating, CT side is like, let's say it's 120 on the CT side, it's 105 on the T side. That's kind of the ratio across most players, like 0.10, 0.15 difference between CT and T side. So yeah, that's I think Kjaerbye did like an insane tournament on the T side. It was Pro League. I think he was playing like a really insane T side. And other than that, it's like Zaiwu, Simple, and these guys that have like really good T sides that are still worse than their CT side, but maybe not as much. But other than that, it's very few players that can keep it up. Yeah, I think his future definitely strong. I watched a couple of these games, like the T side Dust 2. He was doing insane things, like getting like double, triple entries, and sometimes they would still lose. So that was kind of depressing to see, but he is pretty insane. And there's the whole story about his buyout that was apparently in like $300,000 area. So I don't know how soon he's going to be picked up by a better team. I feel like there is a bit of an obstacle there if they paid that much for him. I don't think they're going to let him go cheaply, but there's that, like he played insane. That's a really, really great stat. Other than that, let's actually tie up the NA thing first, and then we have a message from Chad that we need to listen to. I just saw he sent a voice message in WhatsApp, so I was immediately upset. Like, first of all, who sends voice messages at all? Upsetting. Number two, I'm on a podcast. I can't listen to voice messages right now, but it's apparently for the viewers. Other than that, I think NA, Complexity and EG struggling. This is your expertise. NA representative right here. Please give us some excuses for why this happened.
Honestly, for EG, I'm not sure. I think EG didn't play too badly. I think when they lost, it was just Fluxo just played really well, if I recall, right? And Complexity, I don't really know what to think of them, because they obviously did well at Pro League, or they did better than expected, and they lost the shox, which shox, they played well as well. Like they showed a lot of what do you call it? They showed a lot of composure, especially for like a younger team and a team that hasn't been in what do you call it, in like these bigger tier tournaments. So I'm not really sure why Complexity kind of dropped the ball. I'm not sure if it's just because maybe they're demotivated from the major or something like that. I don't know why they exactly should be, just because this is like the only thing left on their calendar, right? Because if they don't qualify for this is it. That's it. Yeah. So for Complexity, I don't really know. For EG, I just think that they haven't really shown exactly just yet the grit in their team, because in general, I feel like their game plans are coming together better, just like the way they kind of manipulate the rotations. And Nealand's doing a really good job on the T side. I think it's just that for this particular match against Fluxo, I think they're just better. Like Fluxo just got the entries, and like Lucaozy, like he was insane. Like he was plus 15. So I don't really know. I think EG is still a bit young. That's how I kind of feel.
Yeah. Do you, Striker, have any thoughts, or
no, not particularly. I mean, these especially the early matches I didn't see. I saw some of the Fluxo ones later, but not the opening ones.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, from score wise, it's already a bit of a, especially for Sharks, because this is a team that lost key players, and then just had to scramble, just got a bunch of basically no names. Like for anybody who doesn't know the Brazilian scene super in depth, and they take down complexity in the first round. So that's crazy on its own.
Let's listen to what Chad the dad has to say. Can you play it so we can hear it? Or
yeah, I have a solution for that. It's gonna be weird, but I'll try.
you're gonna play it off your phone?
Hello, people of HLTV Confirmed. I apologize for my absence currently from this episode. My power has gone out, and myself and the other residents here are doing our best to rectify the lack of power issues as we find ourselves sitting here on a Tuesday evening with lots to do. So once again, I would like to extend my sincerest of apologies. This is an unfortunate situation, and we look to resolve these technical issues as soon as it will be allowed.
Good job.
There we go. This is a statement almost crafted by the wisest and best fingertips of esports PR. I feel like he has said nothing and talked for 30 seconds. He gave us no information if he's going to come back. He pointed no fingers. He didn't even apologize. Did he apologize? I don't know.
He apologized at the beginning.
He apologized, but there's just no information there. He just talked, and essentially at the end of the day, he told us to fuck ourselves and move on with life. That's how it is. It's a classic
Reading
breakup.
between the lines, prof. That's your skill.
This is real hard-hitting journalism right here. Talking about that, some good articles from Richard Lewis on the ESIC thing. I only managed to read the first one. The second one just came out today. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, I didn't actually see the second one.
Really looking forward. The first one I really enjoyed. So shout out.
Especially the reference to a snake eating a donkey. I like that one, especially at the beginning.
The python, just exploding on a donkey. Donkey is pretty cool. They're actually the kind of the protector animal of the area where I live, and they're lazy as fuck. So I vibe with them. Shout out to donkeys. Move on to the EU part. Heroic win. So we have Danish representation, but a lot of things actually happen in the EU with the EU Showdown, which have implications. Some of them have implications for the major. Some of them just generally interesting. I think the first game that caught everyone's attention was Blame F against Vitality. That was a really good game. I mean, honestly, everyone played well. Everyone had on Astralis had a good game to some degree, and I think we might almost say the calling from Glaive was the key part. I think in a way, even Apeks admitted this, even without admitting it. The post-match interview where he said whenever we went 3A, they went B. Whenever we went 3B, they went A. It's yeah, you essentially just admitted you got outcalled, which is kind of fun. What did you guys notice, Danny? Starting with you from that game and what it meant.
Yeah, for that game, Astralis actually played really well. I just think that, especially on Dust 2 and the map afterwards, forget which one it was, might have been Inferno. I just think that Glaive, they came in with a really good game plan. On Dust 2, they were just constantly pushing them. It almost felt like Vitality didn't know what to do when they don't have all the map control that they want. There was one round they aggressed lower B. There was one round they actually pushed up mid and just put Vitality in a spot where they were going long A and they had to face 2 ops or something like that. And I just, the only thing that I can kind of think of for the Vitality moving forward into the major is I want to see them make sure that they can adapt when these kind of things happen, because they probably will happen where a team's going to try to see a certain point of your play and then try to poke at it to see, okay, can you actually handle what the situation is? Because a lot of teams, they try to do that where they see a small little hole on a important area of the map, and then they say, okay, for this game, we're just going to try to push it, see what you do if you don't have it. I think that's something that Vitality might need to work on a little bit, just based on what I saw in their game against Astralis.
Yeah, I think in general they were also lacking kind of a little bit more firepower, because we saw Xiao just doing his best kind of trying to carry every map, but nobody else really joining him. I think Spinks is getting a little bit worrying at this point because he had an okay RMR, but it wasn't like the Spinks that we used to see from the Ents times, and he still kind of seems to be adapting to this team. And doesn't doesn't have those super pop-off games that we saw from him basically all the time when he was in Ents, you know. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, because he seems to still have a lot of freedom. He seems to, like, the team still seems to trust a lot in his choices, because he just has a lot of space, you know. And Apeks has been saying how they've been trying to give him that, you know, apart from maps like Mirage, where he's got like new position, and also Dust too. So that's a little bit of a worrying part for Vitality for me, that they, you know, Spinks was brought on to be this secondary star, and he hasn't necessarily shown that consistently yet. I mean, the last map was just blame F fucking putting his on his back, to be honest. Like, how do you, like, Vitality couldn't do anything to stop him. Like, they were just like double teaming him with Banana. He just, like, it gets them all, gets them both. It just gives us tries at sight. Vitality can't do anything. They just have to save. Then there's a 1v2 clutch that he wins, like, at a time when Vitality can actually make it back. Like, it was just blame F putting Astralis on his back and carrying that map to its closing. So there's nothing really more to say about that, because it was like, what was it, like 25 kills in the first half or something crazy like that.
Yeah, but that's also what I mean too, where it's like, I feel like for Astralis their game plan was to try to take Banana every single time and see what would Vitality do to try to counter it. And they didn't have an answer, because they just kept trying to fight it. They could have tried playing in the site, just try to have a simple setup, but they didn't really try doing that too much. So, you know, that's the adaptation that I want to see from them if they want to make it far at the major.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially like the Spinks angle for me is going to be interesting to watch at the major, considering kind of the environment. And they start against Imperial, right? So they're going to be playing in front of a crowd against Imperial, home crowd, biggest favorites, definitely biggest. Like, in terms of fans, that's going to be the most exciting game. I really want to see him just do better. Like, he is like kind of the promised next generation rifle star that's supposed to be like the duo with ZywOo. And after the original streak has really been kind of meh. And Vitality need more. They just need more from him, essentially. By the way, do I hear something?
Am I back?
Yes.
Am I
hello,
here?
hello. Welcome back to the land
Apologies
of
to
the living.
everybody. Did you guys play the voice message I
did,
sent?
yeah. We
Okay, thank you for playing that. That was the first time I've met so many people in my building before. I didn't even know who my neighbors were up until this little experience we just had, where it was, you know, a meeting of the minds downstairs with everything fucked. Look, I've come back almost on the hour mark here, and I am going to want a TLDR. So can you guys give me a TLDR of the highlights, what we've gone through, what we're up to? And once you've given me the TLDR, I'll throw to the break for Lucas so he can play the ads, and then we can come back.
Yeah,
and keep
we
going.
just
All right,
we're
we
just
stopped. Where did we stop? What was the last thing you heard? I forgot.
I was about to throw to Mahone and ask him to build his dream French roster with the washed up players that are at the top of it.
We can do that at the end of the show if you have extra time. We went through all of that. We went through Skinionaire. He got all of the questions right. It was amazing. Amazing performance. Then we went through NA. We talked about Fluxo and how fucking great Lucaozy is, and he said he's the combination in his mind of Nico and Exile, and he is potentially the future star of Brazil.
Wait, give me that one more time.
Lucaozy.
Okay,
Lucaozy.
yes, yeah, getting all the hype. Yeah.
Combination of Nico and Exile.
Okay.
That's what Danny says here.
Okay.
And we kind of geeked out about them for a bit, and then he gave some excuses for the NA teams failing.
Fair enough.
And then now we talked about how Vitality lost to Astralis, and we want to finish with Astralis heroic, and then go into a break. I think that's perfect.
Okay, yeah. Let's do that. First, before we get there, I need the three of you just to look. You can look as well, Lucas, in our TeamSpeak chat. Can you guys explain the duality of these two back-to-back comments for me? Easy goes, Carhartt shirt goated. Forgotten broccoli immediately after. Sponge has a Carhartt shirt, but he's okay, which I take negatively. Can we split the difference there, gentlemen? Do we know what the issue with the shirt is or isn't?
I think there's no issue with the shirt. It's about the people. Everyone sees things differently. You know, we all live in the same world in theory.
Okay.
But we all actually construct what we see around with our brains, and our brains are molded by our experiences. Even though we live in the same world, it's actually not the same world because we experience it
perceive it
differently.
differently. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we perceive it differently. So that's why in one guy's mind, Carhartt is shit. In the other guy's mind, it's amazing.
right.
Even though it's the same shirt.
I was just wearing a green shirt because I wanted to be like the Green Power Ranger, but you know, it's never that deep. Okay, cool. So now you boys, I'll let you guys keep this going. Get into the heroic.
I just want to say there's one more comment. Some guy said, "I want to have hair like Sponge."
No,
so,
you don't. No.
Yeah, that's what he wrote. I just want you. I just want you to know that he wants that. Maybe maybe his hair is like Moses's. Maybe it's
could be worse than mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's talk about now Vitality. Astralis heroic, big game, massive game. Even though it's online, always fun. I want to ask Striker, what did you think about this particular game matchup?
I didn't see it.
Tell me something about this game. Tell me more.
I just saw it like a part of the comeback. That's it. That's all I saw. Like on the ancient, and that's so like you can't ask me about the series.
What is there to gain from watching that match? I just want to put that out there.
Mr. was pretty good in that match. Actually, he showed that he could have a future if he doesn't continue in Astralis. He had some really good moments.
He'd have a future if he doesn't continue in Astralis.
If he doesn't continue in Astralis, yeah.
So we but we all acknowledge Astralis is dead.
With Maui Snake. Look at the spice coming out of this guy. Insane.
I spent too long with him on that RMR desk. Just had to come out. But no, I think it was one of those matches, especially on Ancient, where Blame F, score wise, statistically, he wasn't there, and the rest of Astralis they picked it up. And Mr. was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. was top ranking. I think he was the only one at the end of the series that was positive. So that's shout out to him. I think it's still an interesting.
What are we talking about, guys?
It's an interesting derby.
A dead team. We're talking about a dead team who just missed out on the chance to play the major. Probably know that this team's going to have roster changes. I know that people are going to say, but they're playing to play in front of their home crowd. Yeah, they are, and they probably wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and tell themselves that. But the motivation in this team has to be in the fucking bin. Right?
I mean, they beat Vitality. What does this say about Vitality?
But exactly. That this entire event, unfortunately, everything has little asterisks next to it of we don't know where the mentality is at.
I think you can take away like 20% of from every game that you could normally take away from like games that were going to happening at the major. Like that's how I look at it. And there was like certain things that you can maybe like individual form of like KDN, for example, being kind of okay. That's like a thing that we can take away from this. Like it's also a confidence booster for heroic.
Yes,
it is a thing that maybe they gave away more than they'd like to. Maybe they played a bit more than they'd like to before the major. But for them, it was something that they had to sacrifice, considering for them it means more than it means for Vitality to play in the Royal Arena, and especially if that means Astralis are not there. Like there, I feel like that's it means something, it means something, but not as much as, I don't know, a group stage game at the major.
I mean, confidence-wise, I mean, that's pretty big considering Heroic's run at the RMR as well was very confident. And so, like, leading up into this, I think Heroic, I mean, that does mean something for the major for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to talk about them in a broader sense. Like when we're looking at the major, I get that it would be mentally worse if they were to have lost this event to Astralis.
Of course.
So that right there is something that they avoided.
That was actually kind of crazy because we were talking about how, when the showdown happened, or not the showdown, the groups happened, we were like, there's a really solid chance that there will be no Danish team at the full final, in front of their home crowd. And obviously there's this whole storyline, the crowd only turns up for Astralis, blah, 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 blah. That's still a storyline, by the way. Astralis is not going to be there, so that's going to be interesting to see how much that's going to affect things in the actual arena.
Do we think it'll affect
attendance?
That
we had both Danish teams in the final.
I do.
You think it'll affect attendance?
Yeah, I think so.
I do a bit, yeah.
Really?
Especially, I feel like even if Vitality qualified, at least they have like Magic and Dupree, and Zonic. Like I feel like that would be still. Funnily enough, people would cheer for Vitality after last year booing Vitality.
Yeah,
that would be hilarious, actually. But yeah, I feel like it is going to be like the lack of Astralis. I feel like it's going to be felt a bit, but I think they're going to still fill it up to a degree that it's not going to to be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I don't think
they have some people to cheer for. They have Kerrigan and FaZe, Asatag in Nip. They have Hooksy and G2. Like it's actually not that bad considering. There's Ruga and OG. There we go.
Okay,
and Heroic, obviously.
Boys. We're on the hour right now. Do we want to throw it in quick to these ads?
Yes,
and then we can come back and start talking about the major.
Yes, let's do it.
All right, throw the break, Lucas.
The Xtrfy M42 RGB, what a fun mouse with 5 colorways, lightweight frame at just 59 grams with the swappable backplate to suit your grip style, the sensor, the easy core, the smooth skates, and driverless control for RGB and DPI is why you should check out the M42 RGB down below.
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on bitskins.com.
Bet. Your bet, your game.
All right, welcome back from the ads. Thanks for sticking with us. And hopefully now we have smooth sailing for the rest of the show. No more technical issues. Hopefully, maybe not. We'll find out. It doesn't really matter either way. Now let's get stuck into this here. I'm going to throw some big questions out there, and we don't have to answer these perfectly, but let's just try and feel our way around this dark room that we're in right now. Prof, we're going into the Rio Major. What's the selling point? What's the biggest selling point for you right now of this event?
I saw your tweet, and I was reading some comments, really trying to see if people have a better answer than I do, because I feel like it's kind of undefined still. I feel like we'll figure out the story as the tournament progresses a bit more. There are a couple of storylines, and there are like some of my personal things that I'm looking out for. I think in the end, it is a lot about there's the Brazilian storyline, but I feel like that could sink quite quickly, unfortunately. And I think if we bank on that too much, it's not going to be could be very not exciting. Like, it could be great, but I don't think we can build the whole tournament on Brazilians, especially when we get to the playoffs. It's unlikely that we have a big deep run there. Furia, maybe you can make a case, but other teams than that, no. I think FaZe, the Grand Slam, second major, big era establishment, I think that's the big storyline. And aside from that, it's ZywOo potentially winning a major. Those are the two storylines for me.
Okay. Does anybody else have, like, if you were doing a Dana White type thing and you were trying to sell this major to somebody who is, you know, a casual Counter-Strike viewer or something like that to get involved watching, does anybody have like a broader view? Mahone, do you have anything?
No, I had the same view as Prof. I think that's the best selling point, is just, can FaZe make this like the best year any team has had in history, I'd almost say, because of all the events they've won. Like, not just the number of events, but the caliber of events they've won. It's just to cap it off with the second major, Grand Slam as well. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Sure. Striker, is that your take? Are you in the same boat?
I would go the other way, because like, this is the major where I'm not actually sure what's going to happen. Like, it's been a long time, you know, since we've had it. I even wrote about this, like, kind of like a quick thoughts piece about how this is the first major since E-League 2017 where I think we don't go into a major where we think, okay, only just 2 or 3 names are in real contention. You know, we don't think there's a massive favorite. You know, we saw, you know, Antwerp, it was all about FaZe and NAVI. Stockholm, it was all about NAVI. Nobody was talking about anybody else being like anywhere close to them in terms of being favorite status, right? And like, as you go back through these majors, you always saw maybe 1 or 2 names that stuck out from the list, until you get to the first E-League major in 2017. So I think we are in a very unique situation in the Counter-Strike scene, which has happened before. I mean, we've seen like 2017 be a pretty competitive year in terms of like a lot of different teams winning different titles, but not necessarily before a major. Before a major, we always had a certain storyline of a couple of teams like looking to break it, you know. And of course, FaZe are still somewhat there, and NAVI are still somewhat there, but considering the setup of the scene at the moment, you know, with how the second part of the season has been very slow, the 2 biggest favorites haven't been particularly convincing, and a lot of other teams have risen up since then. Vitality, Liquid stand out. You know, Cloud9 still having kind of like that, at least like a big upset machine feel where they could beat any of the 4 that I just mentioned and just break their run. And that is the biggest storyline for me in going into this major. We have some, like, the main contenders, of course, but we don't have clear favorites, I think.
Well, underdog major, you're saying.
I think that's. I actually think I do have the feeling that like Krakow could be like the type of thing that we're heading into
Immortals
almost.
Gambit
Like it's
type
very
completely out of this
I
world
know this
situation.
is not maybe the best a selling point for a major, because Krakow, I think nobody likes to think back to Krakow and see it as like a massive major or like one that they particularly enjoyed, exactly because it was just so like neither of those two teams went on to do big things afterwards. You know, it was just a massive fluke. Gambit and Immortals, you know, and like Gambit that didn't even stick to that lineup at that time. So I don't want it to be that way, but you know, we could be in a major where there could be a lot of things, a lot of different things happening, where like the top 6 teams could just take each other out, any of them, or top 5, let's say, and then who knows, like what happens, let's say on the other side of the bracket, if a bracket works out the wrong way, you know, we just see like one team just rise up out of nowhere.
I think what we do with this, right, because there's a couple things which seem consistent with like the people who reply to the tweets or conversations that I've had with other people. The first thing that is apparent is what you've just said there, Striker, that anything is possible, right? And I think that right there is a selling point in itself. This major, anything is possible, right? Like if you just take little bits of information of the things that you were talking about there, and you can take even broader pieces of information, and you can start to compound and make a reason for why all of these things are the case. And we're going to explore these because they tie into the teams. But with all of that information getting shoved into the middle, it feels like anything is possible. But I still feel the common thread of this entire major is FaZe, who are on the pinnacle of what Mahone was saying, of achieving what would likely go down as the most successful calendar year of any team. Right, when you look at what could be in the cabinet for FaZe at the end of this year, right? So the Grand Slam with the second major, then you throw on and they're a big event team, right? In terms of the type of Counter-Strike being played, that's where we all need to kind of separate ourselves, because this is the storyline. Is the Counter-Strike closer to each other? Are FaZe playing worse? Do they just show up for the best events with 100? Those are a different conversation, right? But that common thread is where everybody else's storylines come off, because then you compare NAVI to FaZe. Okay, well, NAVI this year, statistically, everybody other than Electronic has been performing worse, like a little bit worse than last year, and they've been coming second. They're the previous major champions. They've previously been in the major final, the last one against FaZe. They came second at Cologne in that great. So you start adding all these things in, and then once we go team by team, all this information adds up, and they're all hanging off of FaZe, and we can sit here. And this is why for everybody, it's like a bit different. I saw quite a lot of Alexi B stands with like, yeah, NIP's here and G2's not. And like they come from the Finnish fans, or maybe they're an Alexi fan from OG or whatever. But everybody seems to have a different angle of excitement here. And if even half of these angles come true and manifest with good Counter-Strike on top, we get a very exciting event, right? And that what is why we return back to the first point. Anything is possible. Anything is possible is like the Nike slogan, just do it. It seems when you think about when you think about it, it's boring, right? But just do it is fucking genius. Like you think to yourself, mate, I'm in bed, I feel a miserable piece of shit, but if I go out there for a run, I know I'm gonna feel better.
Do the Shia LaBeouf thing, and like that's where you feel the just do it. You know?
Yeah, I can stand. No, I'm not gonna stand up. People yelling might think I'm fucking with the power again. But yeah, like that's kind of the point I'm making here. Is anything is possible. It's actually really cool. Like the fact that is the sentiment, and we're gonna find out, right? We're about to experience this story. So let's explore the reasons why we think that is the case. So we can set our favorites, right? Or the teams who we think are in striking distance of winning. And I think you guys wouldn't disagree if I said FaZe and NAVI would be towards the top of that, with then the likes of Vitality, Liquid, Cloud9, etc., starting to function after. But maybe let's explore some of the whys. So why is it that FaZe feel beatable? Because when we look at the resume, guys, they've won all the big events, right? Maybe they lost to Cloud9 twice, right? They lost in the Dallas playoffs and they lost in the Pro League playoffs. And then I forgot who they lost to in Lisbon at the spring finals, right? But those are the events where they've had more foot faults. And out of the break, people are not mega convinced, but they still did the job at the RMR. They went 3-0. They took care of business. So why are we, right, as a collective, I don't just mean us as individuals, we can even extrapolate and look at maybe what other people think. Why have FaZe looked at as they're weak right now, or not weak, but susceptible to losses? Anyone have an answer for that?
I mean, because we've seen them definitely struggle the same way that we've seen them leading up to Cologne, right? And we are kind of returning to the same place where we saw, okay, this is not the dominant team that we thought this was. You know, we of course, like, we expect them to be at a better level once like things really matter, like it happened at Cologne. We're expecting the same thing to happen now. and they always ramp up to these
But
events.
shouldn't that make them the favorite, the hard favorite?
I mean, the
then?
problem is like this is all potential though. Like this is what we think can happen, but we're not so sure.
The problem there is also EPL, which I think you can say that EPL doesn't matter, but that could be their Grand Slam.
Yeah.
Like you can't really say that it doesn't matter for FaZe. Like if you can realistically, it mattered more for FaZe than anyone else because like winning EPL,
they should have been the most motivated team.
Yeah, usually I think the prize pool for winning EPL is like for first place like 200K or something. It's not a lot, but if you add the Grand Slam to that, then it means a lot, right? So they obviously the season ramps up, so they're not going to be in peak form, but you can't really take that result
like
away.
Make an excuse
for them losing to Cloud9. You just can't, right? So I think that for me was the bigger problem. And then combined with their RMR run, which is 3-0, but it's like quadruple overtime to Gamer Legion, overtime to Fnatic, and 1 against Sprout, which is also a close game. Like the combination isn't really great.
Yeah, like those three teams are teams that could actually. Well, not Sprout because they obviously qualified as Legends.
All qualified
but,
in the end, right?
Yeah, they all qualified, but all these teams are not even like anywhere near the main contenders. Like the Cloud9 loss, it was a really well playing Cloud9. Like that was a really sick game from. I think that was the best game from Cloud9 we saw in a long time, and they didn't really replicate it throughout the in the next game against G2. I think they played right the game after that, but I think. Like FaZe just lost to a really strong Cloud9, and that's in that quarterfinal or whatever it was.
I think it was Liquid after that, right? They played in the semi.
Oh yeah, true. That was the other side.
But this is kind of the point, right? And I want to throw this over to Mahone right now. Mahone, we're talking about this, and we're trying to compare some of these factors of performance. But we're also studying they do really well at big events, but in the lead up to the big event, at the not as big events, they didn't do as well. Are you looking at those? Concern like in Counter-Strike? Are you looking at it like it's a mental thing? How are you framing where FaZe is at right now?
I mean, I think it might be a mental thing. I think just to add on to what you guys mentioned earlier about why it feels like FaZe are struggling a little bit, like it's not a sure thing. It's just the RMR results. Like when you look at those results, it just kind of feels like to me, if they just cleared that 3-0, no problem at all, then I'd see them as like, okay, they should be coming in with good form. But the fact that they didn't, it seems like they're not going to, you don't know what form they're coming in with. And I think just like coming into this major, I'm sure that the pressure is on for them in the sense that, this would be the perfect opportunity, I guess, to capture that Grand Slam. And this would be the tournament to do it. And I just feel like in all of these big tournament moments that they've had, they've always shown up. Like they've shown to be like a team that can grind out rounds. Like they've shown that they can always come back from things. And I think that just comes from the fact that they're just so, I don't know, maybe it's Kerrigan as well. He's able to lead the whole team as a whole to just be so cohesive in these tough moments, because a lot of other teams, when it comes to these moments, it's not that easy to put it all together. And just the fact that they all have belief in each other, I guess, is probably the biggest thing of why they have a real shot at this, even though they look shaky.
Yeah, and that's why everyone considers them the number one team going into the major. I feel like across all of the betting sites, all of the like predictions, whatever, if you're going to talk about like statistically who has the biggest odds, it's still going to be FaZe.
Yep.
I wanted to bring this up here because a part of this definitely has to be in game, but a part of that is also tied to the mental, right? So I'm just trying to live in the heads of, and it's impossible because these guys are the best team in the world right now. I know that the rankings don't say that, but I think we would, as you just said, Prof, they're the favorites for this. But some of the things that mentally drop off could even just be the productivity of the individuals in the server, which sounds crazy. But if you can play your base level game where it's go to my position, communicate in a minimal fashion, play off the chemistry and all the protocols that have been built within this team.
That is kind of how FaZe play, right?
Yes, but the example I wanted to go with this was, I remember interviews with Rain, I think it was during the RMR, where he was asked a question about like, I think someone referenced, maybe it was Kjaerbye that referenced like Rain saying, oh, he's going to buy an M4 and, and he had this M4 and nuke and he gets this kill and then they go and they win a round and then they kind of turn this match around and get back into it. I don't remember the exact example, but it was Rain basically just saying, I'm going to win this round. I'm going to get 3 kills, right? That type of productivity, when we hear that, it's like, oh, he's just said that, he's gone out and done it. Haha, what a baller. But that should happen every game. Like, players are the ones who need to be proactive with the type of plays and moves that they want to be going for. And if the in-game leader has a clear plan of how he wants to approach the game with certain strategies and whatnot, sure. But a game you're adapting to, right? You watch all your demos, you do all your prep, but things are going to happen on the fly that you have to react to. And you need to be communicating well and be setting up for different moves and different smokes and mollies that are coming your way and always adapting. And if people are just a bit more like, we'll just get it done, right? Which is a mental trap I could see FaZe falling into, because it's not a massive arena event. Then maybe that's why, it is Rain, one of the most senior members on this entire team, actually the one who's been the longest out of all of them. He's the one going, yeah, I'm going to go make these plays. Because it's not going to be Karrigan. He's the one who's going to make the broader call, right? When you need someone in the server to make that more like, I'm going to make this round. And he plays pivotal positions where he can make those type of plays. So that's always a good thing to have. But I was kind of just using that as an example. I imagine when they're performing well, everybody has suggestions. Everybody in that team would have a move that they like doing or a play that they like making. And if things aren't 100%, which they clearly haven't been 100%, or they'd be dominant, right? Then I forgot which way I was going with that. Either it will be easier or it won't be easier. You guys know.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, I just wanted to also say, like, these kind of plays, especially individual plays, and how FaZe is as a team, like, they rely on their players being fucking insane, right? And if you're playing like 40, 50 hours, maybe you're not as insane when you're playing like 80, 90 hours in 2 weeks before the major. And I think that might be why we see FaZe ramp up before big events. I feel like they are a team that like learned how to pace themselves through the year.
But let's look at the common denominator here just for a second, and we can all speculate if we think this is either just lethargy of FaZe mentally, or if we think this is a play style thing. Because the team that they lost to in Dallas was Cloud9, and the team that they lost to in Pro League was Cloud9 in the playoffs. Do we think that the way that Cloud9 play the game is a specific way of containing the way that FaZe want to approach the game from a calling standpoint, from an individual standpoint? What do we think there? Because the fact they did it twice, and in playoffs, you can make some excuses. You can say Dallas was just after the major. You can make that excuse. You can make that excuse if you want. But then it happened again at Pro League, and you already talked about the importance of that, Prof, because of the fact they had the Intel Grand Slam on the line. So why? Why is it Cloud9 who's beaten them both times? Is it just a coincidence?
I think Cloud9 have this, what do you call it? Cloud9 have this thing where it's like they're willing to be slow about things, and they're willing to not, like, I feel like they're one of the teams on CT side especially where they're okay with not getting information right away. And that's the one thing that a lot of other teams nowadays, especially in today's meta, they're always going to try to push for something. Like if they lose one part of the map, or if they lose somebody, they're going to try to push somewhere. But for Cloud9, not like as much as it was back when they were in Gambit, but more specifically now, they're more content to just sit in a setup where just have two guys hold their crossfires as best as they can. And it's weird because it's like, how can you count on that? But for some reason, their individuals make it work. And the other thing as well that I noticed about their T sides is just that they're the kind of team that know how to work back in man disadvantage situations as well. They're the kind of team where it's like they're going to feel out the map. Maybe they get a kill. Maybe they don't. Maybe they get into like this 3v4 type of situation, and they know how to poke and prod just enough so that it causes somebody else on the other side of the map to react, and they can capitalize on that. That's the one thing about Cloud9 that they do probably better than almost any other team, I would say, right now. And that's why, like, you know, even when Maui talks about their low flash assists or whatever, it's because it's a result of how they play. It's just they don't rely that much on doing those kind of execute type of things. It's more so about catching people out of position. And with the individuals that they have on their team, they can actually pull it off against a team like FaZe, where, you know, it is a lot of individuals who are good at dueling. That's my thought on it.
Yeah.
I think it also kind of this will kind of ring alarm bells for FaZe as well, because this is the only team that they lost to consecutively in like important series. And so like Karrigan, you can bet your ass that once Karrigan sees, okay, Cloud9 might, you know, we might clash at some point, like Karrigan is gonna go in and figure out, why did we fuck up here? Like, why are we having problems against this team, and figure out a way past it the next time. So I think that's, like, obviously, you know, this is what anybody could technically do at any level, but I know that Karrigan is very solutions oriented, and he's going to be very attentive to something like this when they potentially meet again.
Yeah, and I saw someone in chat referencing that FaZe beat Gambit at the start of the year. They did in Katowice in the quarterfinals, and then they did during Pro League. But that was during the whole start of the war, as well as them being in the players situation. And also these are the more recent results. The from
Right.
one from Pro League and the one from what was
Dallas.
reference Dallas. Yeah.
I think both games. Someone in chat wrote it as well, but I was just about to say were like Axile insane games, like 140, 150 ratings.
But it makes sense that he with what Mahone was just saying, right?
Yeah.
He's an aimer going up against aimers.
For me, it's like a very specific matchup. It's a very interesting specific matchup. Like I completely agree with what Mahone was saying in terms of like how these two teams play, and it's very rudimental CS in a way. Like especially when I think about like FaZe CT sides, like their A site Inferno holds, like it feels like they're just holding angles, like killing two each of them, and then it's like a 3-4-1 trade every time in mid, and then you win the game. And that's just how these two teams match up. And when you have Axile popping off like insane, then it's very hard to win. So maybe this is the solution for Kerrigan. Like how can we avoid this guy dropping 150 ratings on us? I feel like that's a very good way to win if they can figure that out.
Maybe Zanzana just reminded me, and I forgot how I completely missed this one, but that was where Cloud9 fucked up the veto in Antwerp, right, against Groove, and they had to play Nuke. So maybe since then they're just so fucking pissed off that Kerrigan wouldn't let them try again that they go, fuck it, we're just gonna ruin FaZe's day every time we see them. That was Zanzana with the comment there, so thank you for that. But yeah, this is interesting because what we're trying to do now is poke holes in FaZe being the favorite. So how else do we start poking holes? Just because we've seen them susceptible to other teams in the RMRs, the games were close, that means that other teams on a good day are going to be able to push FaZe. And I think that shows us, Striker, we'll throw this one to you. Do you think we find ourselves in this era, in this moment, doubting FaZe a little bit because they're not dominant like Astralis was when they were in their best form, or they're not dominant like NAVI was? They're still winning. They're winning the big tournaments, but we're getting best of fives that go the distance. When Astralis were the best, it was 3 maps and make sure you get home to beat the traffic, right? So do you think it's because we're still living in remembering how it was when they were getting it done?
I think the problem is, we were also doubting Astralis at points, like when there were a couple of tournaments maybe, but the problem is that at the moment we have so fewer events compared to the Astralis times that, it's been over 3 months, almost 3.5 months since FaZe won Cologne. That's the last event FaZe won. And since then, they've been probably about 50-50 in terms of like matches won, but probably not by so much. Maybe like
we haven't had an arena event since Cologne.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's been 3.5 months since we saw big events go down, and since we saw FaZe win. So of course, like if you don't see a team win in that long, you're gonna start doubting them because that's true. And obviously, it's not like they had a lot to win. They only had Pro League to win, but they weren't super confident at the groups, at the Blast groups. They weren't super confident at the RMR. That's a lot of compounding results that we see FaZe struggling. And so, like, I am not convinced that they are always going to be like there when it matters. They've done it. Okay, sure, they did it in Cologne, but that was the only time that we saw them struggle beforehand and go back. Can they really do it the second time? Like, I'm not, like, mentally, I don't really have that confidence. Like, I know that I'm sure they will put in much more time than they would have otherwise. Like, I'm sure that, like, from that perspective, of course. But are they actually going to be better form-wise individually? Because that's also something that's been a struggle. Like Rain has had some like off games and things like that. Like that just
we're talking about
the
team being a big tournament team. He's a big match player.
Well,
he's the definition of that for those boys there, right? Like it takes a bit to get Rain out of bed in the morning. It is going to have to be an arena full of players. But I think this is cool. We've kind of painted a picture that these are the favorites. They have a lot to win, right? They will definitely bring into conversation what Mahone was talking about with the most successful calendar year of a team, right? That's definitely the conversation that will be going forward. So we've also decorated nicely of the gray clouds coming and of why maybe it won't be their event, right? Which is nice. So now we have, I guess, to talk about some of these other names. Now the next one down would be NAVI and their recovery road, right? And it's not that they have fallen very far. They haven't fallen very far at all, Prof. They're kind of just like over the fence. They're peering over every now and again. They're, hello, we're still here. We're still very good, but we're not as good as we were when we were winning. Do you think that there's any added, like we know the dramas of this year and what it's brought for the region, Ukraine, Russia bullshit that's been going on, right? But do we see a shift now going into this major? Okay, it's a major again, right? NAVI, they're going to give this their all. This is going to be is there any chance to notch NAVI's name into their second major title?
I mean, there's definitely a chance. They're definitely I think they are in the top 2 with FaZe. Recent results tilt towards the FaZe's side, but it's not like Navi have fallen off the cliff in any way. I think it's definitely a problem that we don't have more actual events that we can see, like them making a bit more deeper runs. Of course, EPL wasn't that great, but also like EPL was for Simple one of his worst tournaments in like 3 years. So do we think he's gonna play as badly at a major, especially
Zai was
early
coming for
on?
the #1 right now, isn't he? He's making a late year charge.
That's the problem. Like he is rating wise great, but like again, it's like one good tournament that they played was EPL, and that's more or less it. Everything else was a group stage. So
Well, I was adding some motivation for Simple there, mate. You know, I was trying
I'm hoping that some like realistically, I'm not saying I don't know the numbers, but like if Zai wins MVP of all of the remaining tournaments, then maybe you could make a case that he is the best player of the year. But so far, Simple has been like much better in the first half, so it's hard to see that really happening. And that is, of course, presuming Zai wins MVPs at the major and like 2 blast events and whatever else they might or might not play. Like is that going to happen? Probably not. I just want to say, yeah, I think Simple is going to be playing better. I think Navi is still going to be like a playoff, like lock in, despite some like issues maybe with SDY and Perfecto. Perfecto has been great. I think Electronic adapting to IGL, I'd say also very well. I don't think they're a team that is in much danger as maybe people try to make it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the concerns that we had around Bit and his performance, he was the one that I thought was a little bit worrying at the EPL, because you could see that his output just wasn't as consistent.
He's not as good as last year, right?
He just had off games. But the thing is, like, apart from EPL, I think he's been pretty much just as good, or at least, you know, he's just still had those games. You know, I can still see him. And even if you look at the stats outside of EPL, he's been really solid. So I don't think that there's so much concerns in that aspect, and that's why I feel like maybe Navi are closer to FaZe now than maybe we think. Because, you know, apart from EPL, I think they've won even more matches than FaZe have, I think, and just looked more convincing in the matches that they won. Even the RMR campaign was just very convincing from them. They beat Mouse and Outsiders, I think, was the other big team that they beat on the way without too many issues. You know, they just looked like business as usual, not like FaZe, like we have to fucking struggle through 4 overtimes every match we play, but like actually just getting it done as they're supposed to. So I would almost say that just based on that, Navi are not, I don't want to say in better form necessarily, but closer to FaZe than I think we would have expected, or than people think.
Okay. Mahone, who do you think has more of a complete game out of the two, FaZe or Navi?
I think because Navi have a bit of time to actually prep for this event, I feel like with their team more specifically, whenever you give their kind of team more time to prep for an event, they usually look stronger than FaZe would in that case, because I just feel like there's something about the way Navi approach like these bigger tournaments where you can kind of see like where their game plans are, like whether it's going to be, okay, this game we're going to try to abuse the banana a lot, or this game we're going to try to work mid much more on overpass. I think it's just for some of the past results that they've had, were Pro League, Blastfall groups or whatever, I just think they haven't had as much time to practice and iron out the things that they want to do. But for this major, they have the time to do that. So I would be expecting a strong Navi, in my opinion, just based on what I've seen from them in the past, and as well just from my time, even last year when I was with NIP. It's just every time we prepped against Navi, they were just so difficult to deal with, because you may have some reads on what you think they're going to do, but then when there's just more time in between the last time they play an official and the time that you actually see them play in the actual game, there's just so much that ends up being different that you can't really be ready for it.
Yeah, I think it goes back also to what I was saying about their like the stupid record that they have at the moment. You know, with playoffs finishes, they are just an incredibly consistent team. They're always a threat, always. Like you never think like Navi are just going to go out of groups. Like there's not. I can see a bigger chance of FaZe not turning up and just bombing out early than Navi. Basically, that's how I would put it.
Yeah,
maybe I wouldn't put them at the same level as for the actual title, because if we see FaZe turn up, I think they are above Navi, but I could see a much better chance of FaZe bombing out than Navi bombing out, if that makes sense.
No, I
understand. Because of their like incredible consistency. They are just insane.
Okay. Well, Mahone, I want to jump onto what you're saying there when you were prepping for this team, right? And when you actually got into the game, it was different. It different in the sense that you felt like they had just changed everything up, or different in the sense that they had been able to tweak things that you were looking like they had already seen. Hey, they're going to try and exploit this, so let's adjust. Like, what do you have any? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and it's hard to remember specifics like that. But do you have a general framing, or is it a bit of everything?
Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit of both. Like sometimes they might look completely different on a map like Overpass, where they put a lot more emphasis on, let's just say, B monster instead of mid, right? Or it could be slight small things where it's like on Nuke, Electronic works outside, they throw these specific smokes, and we know exactly what the move is going to be, but they add a second player there instead, right?
Okay.
It's these little adjustments that sometimes they do that you're not really expecting it, because it's just, okay, well, the last official they played was this long ago. That's all we have to really work off of. But those little things can throw off a team, because then it makes you think, it's like, okay, well, how different is it really? You don't know when you're in the moment of the game. You only know after you've seen the game afterwards.
Makes you doubt the prep a little bit as well in the middle of the game. Yeah, and that's never where you want to find yourself. Okay, so I think we've established we still think that NAVI are very strong, and they've obviously had two big grand final losses this year to FaZe. Do we think that FaZe are the biggest threat to NAVI, or are NAVI one of these teams that's like, well, the biggest threat is themselves and the type of like, are we gonna throw that on them here, or like, what are we saying for NAVI? Because if we're saying they have enough runtime, right, coming into this event, they're where they want to be. They've been, I would say, the second best team of the year. I think it'd be hard to say they haven't been the second best team of the year. And we still consider them in striking distance to take trophies. So where are the holes in NAVI, right? We poke some holes in FaZe. Can we poke some holes in NAVI?
I mean, they also lost a big series to Vitality at the EPL. I mean, they lost multiple series at EPL. Obviously, that's the weakness that we can look at.
G2, yeah.
They lost to G2. They lost to an IP. Lost to Endpoint.
Hey, they lost to Complexity in their best of one. Actually,
yeah, that's the thing. Like EPL is the one tournament you can look at and see that, okay, NAVI do have, like, they legitimately, they probably should have gone out of that event in groups, because they had 2-3 record. They only got through because of round robin and the way it works. And nobody else basically being better. That was the problem. They probably should have gone out in the groups already. So that's the one event that you can look at and those results and say, okay, maybe NAVI do have weaknesses and that some other teams than FaZe can exploit.
That's the interesting.
I was going to say, I think it's going to sound really cliche, but I think it might just come down to the individuals making sure they show up. Like,
okay.
Because I don't think there's anything too wrong with their game tactically, or even just the preparation that they put in. But at the end of the day, if Simple's not getting the kills or putting up the performance that he normally does, if Bit isn't doing the same thing as well, Counter-Strike at the end of the day is still a game where you have to focus on the execution of how well you get these kills. And for NAVI, I feel like they have all the ingredients. And if they were to lose or not perform as well, I think it'd be actually down to the individuals. I feel like that'd be the only condition.
Okay. Yeah, no, that seems fair enough. Do you have any concern about Bit, Mahone? Because they're looking at his land rating this year. I don't know that I'm just using numbers here, but the land rating in 2022 is a 1.11, and land rating in 2021 was a 1.21, and different kind of lands across that year, right? That's when we had the soft entry back. It wasn't straight into arenas. We had Cologne in the hotel. Is Bit a concern for you? Because Maui, I know, was pointing it out a lot in some of the broadcasts here, saying he seems like he's been found out. A lot of teams are being able to deal with him, and he became the third star of this team. He feels like he has to be firing on all cylinders. Doesn't feel like this guy can go missing, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure, quite honestly. Like, I honestly haven't really looked at Bit too much to see exactly what he's doing or how different he's playing, but I think he has always been that one player where he kind of reminds me of Spinks on Vitality in a way, or maybe not Vitality, but just Spinks in general, where he always seems to get one more kill than he should. And I think as long as Bit can kind of put that performance up, especially like on maps like A Overpass, I think about, where he always gets one more kill than he should. As long as he can do that, I think that is where he needs to be. I'm not entirely sure if that's where he's been at right now, quite honestly.
Yeah, interesting. Overpass was one of those maps that I think Maui was definitely pointing out, like he was just kind of autopiloting type thing. But it's another curious thing, right? This kid's only 19, and we automatically, after his first kind of year, we're like, yeah, this guy's just nuts. It's like there was always going to be some variance.
Really, really strong, to be fair. Like, it's a very, very rare that this happens, that a player just enters the tier 1 scene and immediately is what was he, seventh in the world or something like that.
But this is something to look out for, though, right? Because if he is having a drop off and he's unable to contain the level that he had that got them winning, then he's a concern. And we know that, like, when the tensions get high in that team, we don't know what's going on. I don't speak the language, but the body language and the way that they appear to be talking to each other sometimes doesn't feel like it's going to be the most fun environment, right? So it doesn't take a lot to have a Navi meltdown, and then everybody's in a bit of trouble, right? That's always a possibility with this team, but that's the problem. Is like, that's not hardcore analysis. That's
but they also it also doesn't seem to matter whatsoever whether they're in a bad mood or not. Like, it's just it seriously doesn't. Like, you can tell, like, this goes back with Navi for such a long time, where they just get tilted for the stupidest reasons, but they still deliver in the end, you know. So I feel like it's just like the way that team operates, or, you know, the region in general. Like, it's just interesting.
All right, what I want to do is I want to expand this to a couple more teams here, and then we'll go into if we have any like picks outside of the craziness, and then we'll just do these pick'ems, right? Because I think there's still a couple of names here that we need to explore in a little bit more detail, because they're teams who are on the radar to be picking up this trophy. Now, I'm going to throw one right at you here, mahone. I'll give you the first one off the plate here. Do you think Vitality, and I don't mean by their ranking, I mean by the type of Counter-Strike you've seen, do you think they're overrated right now?
Not overrated. I think they're fairly rated.
Okay.
I'd say they're fairly rated. I mean, I don't think anybody says that, oh, they're going to definitely win the major. I don't think anybody's in that boat, but I don't see anybody saying it's like, oh, no chance for Vitality at all. So I think they're fairly rated. That's my take on it. And just with the way they play, I mentioned it earlier while you weren't here, I think they just need to kind of work on adapting a little bit better mid game, because once they kind of do that, I think they're going to have a lot more success. Because sometimes when they do have their game plans work out, it works out pretty well. But then when the other team kind of throws like a spanner in the works, they kind of struggle sometimes. And I think that might be what they need to just fix coming for this major.
I think like the recency bias of them winning EPL doesn't, like, and then obviously not following it up with Blast, but that, I think a lot of people can write that one off, right? But a lot of people are just happy to stay online, right? But the EPL victory, a lot of people probably get very excited there. Whereas the way that I think a lot of us should use that is that they're ramping in the right direction at the right time, right? Because we've seen what's possible if everything is working well for this team and how high they can go, and they could probably even go higher than what we've seen. But we've seen like that direction they can head. And that's why they're a name who are in the mix for they can win the major. But everything would need to come together, right? Like the fact that you can. I look at this team, just the names on the paper and the way that you construct the conversation. It's a strong team. And where it's at in its life, as far as the age of like Dupree and Apeks go, they're in a good window, right, for trying to get this done. ZywOo, Spinks, and Magis, this will be the star trio of the team, and hopefully the trio of the team in the future. And then you have the leadership backbone with all the experience, the major trophies, the same with Sonic, the coach. There's a lot of things to like about Vitality. But at the same time, I tweeted this the other day, and is this a cause for concern for anybody here? Vitality with this roster are yet to play FaZe.
Yeah.
So is that a cause for concern? Because we haven't seen them tested against who we consider the best team in the world. Like, that means that the first time they're going to do it will be at the major if they face them. Is that should we be worried about that, or are we excited about that?
I think, I mean, there's definitely excitement in it, just because of, I mean, Vitality just haven't played that much, if you think about it, like, because Spinks came in during the offseason, and so of course, like, they're not going to play with this, like, that many teams with this roster. They've played Navi, they've played Heroic, they've played, like, I don't think they even played Cloud9. I don't remember a Cloud9 Vitality match.
Cloud9 and Navi haven't played each other this year, right? That's another little fun.
Oh, I don't know about that. I didn't realize that. The way I'm looking at Vitality is basically like, let's say if there was a really difficult route put in front of a team, like let's say, you know, there's like 5 different top 10 teams that they have to beat on the way to the major. I'm backing FaZe and Navi. But let's say, you know, some of these big teams beat each other on the way. Vitality maybe have a slightly easier route, but then they meet one of the big teams, or maybe 2 across like some of these, like this like playoffs run, and like in the legend stage. That's where I can see like Vitality making up that one upset, and then, you know, maybe like at the end of a run that maybe wasn't as strong. I don't see them as the stable team that can just go through a very difficult run, beat 5 different great teams, but I can see them pulling off like an upset or 2 against some of the bigger names, you know. So if they get a big win, you think that, and then they go up against teams that aren't as good as the mega elite, then they can pull off a miracle here. But if they have to run the gauntlet of every big name, they I think probably don't have the depth to go the whole way. I was going to say that. Yeah, I don't think they've shown enough of a depth for me to believe that they can, like, let's say, you know, they're put in front of Heroic at first, and then they beat them. Then the next team is FaZe that they have to beat in the semifinals, and then like in the final it's Navi or whatever. Like, that's not a run that I can see them winning. You know, I don't think that they have the stability for that at the moment. I think that's, especially, you know, looking at their individuals, you know, they just don't have the depth in that aspect to match up to like a FaZe and NAVI.
Is map pool wise a problem? Like, you think about it, they ban Ancient. Both the other teams, NAVI and FaZe, banned Vertigo. But apparently, according to NAVI, they've been working on Vertigo. Heard that in every second news article and report. So, like, what do we think about like that? Do the maps in that regard make it? Because this is why I like Cloud9. This is why we'll talk about Cloud9. I'm sure. Oh, didn't we already talk about Cloud9? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Kind of directly, yeah.
I like Cloud9 because they play Overpass, Vertigo, and Ancient. Right, and I think you need to be good at those maps to be able to flex in the map pool against a lot of different opponents here. Now, when we get to the Mega Elite conversation, that it changes, right? Because both NAVI and FaZe don't play Vertigo. Maybe that's why NAVI are practicing Vertigo. So if they go up against FaZe in the future, they can leave it and force FaZe to have to ban it and then have a bit more freedom in the veto. Like, it could literally be.
Are they gonna go into like a map veto mind game with Kerrigan? I don't know how that usually ends up badly for the other side.
Yeah, but look, like, maybe, I don't know. Why not? Why not pull it out at a moment like this? And especially if they have truly been working on it, why not? Yeah. If like it's one of those conversations that can be had.
Imagine if that's the strategy, man. It's just like bait Kerrigan into picking Vertigo because he's done it before, man. That would be so.
Well, that
funny.
happened with Ents, right?
Well, of course. I mean, we've seen, that's what I'm saying. Like, Kerrigan has definitely shown the propensity to just like go for these wild picks just because. I mean, like, I'm gonna call you out on it, you know.
IEM Sydney 2017 or 18 when they played against Astralis. It was FaZe Astralis back and forth on cobblestone. It was like talking about it and then picking it. I think FaZe lost it the first time, and then they played it again in the playoffs, and then beat Astralis on the same map. It was a very like back and forth, and they did interviews about it. It was a crazy thing between him and Glaive. But definitely, I would not bank on like winning a map veto mind game against Kerrigan as my winning condition in a series for sure.
I don't know if it's probably not as huge of a consideration as what I'm making. I just thought, like, if we're talking about these teams, does that play in as a favor for Vitality? And that's it. I don't know if I don't think it does. I think like map pool wise, there's no way they're never going to be deep, right? Like, they only added Magisk and Dupree not that long ago, so they're still, well, it's a long time ago now, but it in the scheme of things, when you compare to the Na'Vi core, and you know, and you could even say the same with like the FaZe core, right? Those cores have been around longer, at least with the understanding of how they want to approach the game. Vitality have kind of had to reinvent that this year.
Yeah, I think they also don't have the same reliability in terms of like their main fragging power, essentially. Like, we just constantly see Zai1 top, and of course, like, he outperforms anybody other than Simple, and sometimes even Simple. But then, you know, from one series it could be Sphinx, another series and maybe can be like Magisk, because somebody just like steps up. But it's not across the board that I see like three guys that I know that are going to be reliable at any point. And that's what I see with FaZe, that's what I see with Na'Vi, at least the majority of the time. I don't see that with Vitality, you know. That's the biggest problem for them at the moment.
Okay, so they're trending in the right direction. They've obviously won a tournament. They've got a lot of experience. I painted all the highlights before, and if they sit on a bit of a heater and continue in this trajectory of improvement, they could win the major. I think we all kind of agree on that kind of sentiment here. Okay. Did we discuss Cloud9? I forgot.
Kind of slightly.
I mean, we talked about
the FaZe matchup, but not about them particularly. So we should touch on them a bit.
Here's a question: do Cloud9 have the highest floor?
They have a high floor for sure. I don't know about the highest. I mean, the highest is probably Na'Vi.
That's why I want to open this conversation. They always play close. It feels like Cloud9. Maybe if I go check the numbers, that's not the case. But it always feels like Cloud9 play close. They'll always give away a couple more rounds than they should because they love their fucking saving. So they're always going to give away a couple more rounds that maybe they could win against Nubia teams, right? Because they don't want to go for a fucking retake because Groove's going to hit them in the back room if they don't, right? So, like, you know, where would we put Cloud9 in that conversation?
For me, they're like a kind of a top 5 up there with Liquid. I think they're like below the 3 that we mentioned, and then I think it's Liquid and Cloud9. They have different kind of positives. It's hard for me to see Cloud9 winning the major. I think it's especially because of their kind of lack of winning like championship mentality so far as a team. And
you mean, does that reflect in their play style, or just the fact that they haven't lifted those trophies?
Just in terms of lifting trophies and like winning in those big games. You know, in some of these big games that we saw them play and in arenas.
Well, we've seen they need Jack on stage to lift the trophy for them. So maybe
yeah,
that's
without you can't do it without him. So maybe they fly him out to Brazil, and maybe he coaches them just like Akari and Furia, and that's gonna unlock everything. But no, I think that's for me kind of an issue. I know it's one of those teams that like on paper they can play amazing, but you don't really back them in a grand final. Like I could see them getting to a grand final, but I don't see them, winning in that environment.
But couldn't an argument be made that they're the most, or the team that should have the most
experience together?
Structure? Yeah, because the type of Counter-Strike they play and the fact that this team's been together for what feels like forever.
But isn't that a little bit of a problem, as well? Because that's kind of
well,
like
they were needing to get their stat points up in different categories. Unfortunately, Striker, they lacked in experience. So that's the stat column they needed to get up. They didn't need to get up the headshotting people column. That column was already pretty good, right? And their approach to the game was already pretty good. I think I like the comment you made there, Striker, about Prof, about the championship mentality. And I think that it could be reflected in the play style because Counter-Strike.
That and like just Nafany, sometimes when he has off games, they still really didn't figure out a way to.
They need more options for answers.
Yeah, they didn't really figure out the way if he gets shut down, how to win rounds, how to get into halves, like not even to win the game. Like when that doesn't work, their T sides just like look depressing. I think they have been doing better recently, and maybe their whole like starting on T side did work out for them in a way since they get more room to work with. I don't know, or to get like official practice, but that has been consistently their issue in big games when you think about the majors or like playoffs of big tournaments when they just like lose 16-5, 16-8.
But I like their methodology in these games. You referenced starting on the T sides, right? So let's look into that a little bit more. In a lot of those games, not all of them, they got off to good starts, either with like a pistol win or a force by win, and then went on like a good streak of rounds. And then once they had built their little bank, right, and they had like extra cash money, then you start seeing them out, and they have like 5 or 6 rounds on the T side already. Then they start saving a lot more, and then the half kind of tapers out, and maybe they win 1 or 2 more at halftime. I like the methodology they go with here because they're setting themselves up with enough. Then they're removing all the risk and going, we know we just need 1 or 2 more rounds now over the next 6. Let's just try and get those 1 or 2. We don't have to win them all. And I like the way that they're approaching that. The thing that it feels like to me that they're missing, the lack of options with Nafany, or the lack of finding the new options, because there should be plenty of options. That one, as well as the attitude of knowing that you are better than your opponent. I want that, like
the killer mindset, right?
Yeah, I want a bit more of that from them. But how do you? I guess you can only quantify that in game when you see them taking a few different types of fights or being a little bit more assertive, as opposed to like it's the same kind of thing of like diversifying your portfolio of the playbook, like when the Outsiders VP conversation we had before. And now sometimes they play some of the fastest rounds of Counter-Strike we see. So I think it's about finding that mix. Mahone, are they on the direction to find that mix, or is this team in need, in your mind, of a personnel change to be a championship contender?
Honestly, I'm not sure, but I think the one thing about Cloud9 is they operate a lot on map control. Like they're the kind of team where it's like if you give them map control, then they know how to work it. But then as soon as the team starts being a bit more aggressive, makes it a 4v5, 3v4 situation, makes it a bit harder for them. And even though they do have good options while being down, I think one of the things that they kind of need to add more in is kind of like more what do you want to call it? More, they need to be able to grind out. They need to be able to grind out entries a bit better, in my opinion, just because it's like sometimes their entries get shut down. Like Nafany gets shut down, and then what does the team do? I feel like they kind of need to refine their openings a little bit better. I think that'd probably be the best way to put it on their T side. Refine their openings a little bit better so that they're actually in like 5v4 with map control type of situations, because even though they win a lot of rounds where it's like they're down 3v4-ish, that's not very consistent. It's not like an ingredient that you can always count on, and it'll only work against certain teams that like to be more proactive. So I want to see them be a bit better when it comes to their openings. But I think another thing that I also thought about from a while ago is just, I'm not sure if they have a sports psychologist or something like that, but if they don't, I feel like it'd be a great time to get one, just to make sure that they're all on the same page about how they're kind of treating the game and just how they're, I guess, treating each other even. I have no idea what it's like in the camp of their team, of like, are people contributing when they should? I don't know.
Yeah, I think what you were talking about with their openings, and then just also that killer mindset, I think that's also why we see them pick up some of these big wins based on Exile, because he's that guy who has to be the guy who steps up and just like makes a random play or just like gets a couple of really quick kills when he doesn't necessarily need to have support. He just needs to take it into his own hands because he sees, okay, my team is in a big weird spot. I just have to step up here. And that's the series like that against FaZe, that he had at EPL, and then some of these big wins that they've picked up have always been him being the difference maker. Maybe not necessarily the best player on the server, but just making the difference in key rounds where they maybe shouldn't have won. So I think that's just something that they need more of. Maybe not necessarily just from him. It could also be somebody like Hobbits, joining him and having a little bit more initiative. Because it's obviously not going to be Shiro. He's just not that type of an helper. He's always going to be more of a supportive and just like making sure that he doesn't take any risks. Inters is again more of a supportive element. So it has to be either Hobbit or Exile who make these plays a little bit more and get them out of these situations.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that they can't get a little bit more out of Shiro in that department, because you're right. Like, if it's not working for Nafany with his aggressive plays, and we can make comparisons to like Art, like sometimes Art has those games he gets through, sometimes Nafany has the games where he gets through. Like sometimes they're like a rat making it through the fence, right? You're like, how the fuck did they find this space, find this gap? They've contorted their body and they've got their opening kills and away they go. But if they're shut down, this is where you need to turn to the rest of the team. And I feel like it used to be Hobbit. Like I feel like we used to get a lot more. Hobbit used to be that guy who was like, fuck this shit. He was like, I'm not, and he just got like a random 3K and then they win the round or whatever. But that feels a little bit more absent. Obviously, we need to look at these impact rounds and whatnot. But yeah, okay. So we think that there's a bit more to Cloud9, but we're still waiting to see it. For me, I don't know if anybody would co-sign this type of a thought, but if this version of Cloud9 doesn't make the playoffs, I think there needs to be a conversation about a change of something. I don't know the what. I think you keep Axel and Shiro 100%, and then after that, everything else could be up for debate. It depends on how drastic you want to go.
Could even be a coaching change,
I don't know if they'd do that. Do you think they'd do that?
I don't see that happening just because of Cloud9 and
feels like Groove.
I don't think Groove needs to like leave. Maybe you just put him in a different role in the team, right?
Or have someone else come in with a different
like
idea.
Oversights. Yeah.
Maybe,
But that, I guess, goes back to what Mahone was saying about we like the psychologist, right? We don't know what the fuck's going on in the team, the mentality of all of that. It's a curious one. It'd be nice to know. Maybe we'll learn one day. All right, I want to do one more.
We should talk about Liquid as well. I guess maybe
Liquid
a little
was the
bit,
one
and then
team I
we
wanted
can
to
get
talk
into
about.
the rest.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it quickly and then go to Pick'Em.
Well, we all have positive things to say about Liquid, right? I think we've liked the direction they're going in, but this is the conversation about like you can compare them and Vitality. I know they made their change a little bit before Vitality, right? Like Vitality was Spinks, then with Yakinda, but they're both plugged in one player with two completely different ways about going about that. Spinks has gone in. It's like, here you go, bro. This position was open for you. We need someone who knows how to play these roles. This is great for you. For Yakinda, it's like, hi, we all know how to shoot, but can you tell us where we need to stand when we shoot, right? Like that's he's kind of come in here and has determined how this team is going to play. And I'm sure that there's still a little bit of North America left in here, a flair of the way that the other guys like to do things. I can guarantee you that. But we have heard the narrative the entire time out of the Liquid camp, the contributions that Yakinda is having to this team, right? And North America are back on the map thanks to a nice, sexy Latvian engine in there purring beautifully. But this is my question for everybody. If that Latvian engine has one day, and I don't know anything about cars, I'll set myself up for the fucked analogy here, but let's say that engine, it's not starting too beautifully. Let's say, it's a little bit slow to get going that day. And I don't even just mean the fragging department. I'm talking about him and what he brings to the morale of the team, the heart of the team, the core of the team, not just as a player, but as a person. If he's not there, is the team fucked? They fall back into depressed, I want to kill everybody on my team and then myself Liquid. Is that the version that happens if Yakinda wakes up on the wrong side of the bed?
Look, the thing is, knowing Yakinda, that's just not going to happen. On the server, yes, it can happen,
we saw a bit of this. I've already seen a bit of this. He's getting infected. And then doesn't have a conjunctivitis in his eye, mate. He's given the face palms because he wasn't. I've already seen it.
Of course he doesn't. I mean, it's not like he's been like the kindest player, like when he's on the server and things like that. Like I've seen him on Outsiders, and I've seen him, like having a back and forths with the team and things like that. That's not necessarily him being not in the game, or anything like that. If anything, that's kind of the opposite, where he gets frustrated with something that's not supposed to be happening, and he makes that clear. Like he's that type of a guy, who's.
Yeah, but when your team is My Chemical Romance, mate, you can't. You have to make sure that you're singing Taylor Swift the whole time, because if they start riffing in their emo shit, it's over. You're not getting them out of their bedroom for a week.
Fuck, what are you talking about?
That's true. Yeah. Well, maybe they can shake it off.
Yeah. Look, I think knowing Ikinder, I think that's not going to be too much of a struggle. I think he's I don't think that's going to be a personal problem there.
For the reactions to his joke.
That's a good one though.
One of the better ones in a while. So you don't think that'll happen? Does anybody think it'll happen? Because I'm the type of guy who thinks it could happen.
That he's gonna get the emo virus.
Yeah, well, it's contagious.
He literally did get sick during the RMR. I know he was not feeling great.
Cologne,
so he wasn't emo. He was just sick.
But during Cologne, he was sick too.
Yeah, but maybe that's the liquid effect.
Maybe we need to put him and Fevin in a bubble, mate.
It's physically affecting him. You know, it's just a bad vibe. He can't. His body is not vibing with it.
But I mean, at the same time, like he's also now is the time that he's going to be fully committed. You know, because obviously, I'm sure there's been enough of a lead up time where it was obvious he was going to sign eventually. Just needed to like run down some of these last details with with his contract with Virtus Pro and blah 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 that he needed to buy himself out and things like this. But like now that he's officially signed, I think that's going to take some pressure off as well. So I just don't see that being much of a concern. To be honest.
So if we don't, and I'm not speaking for everybody here, but then where do we see Liquid in all of this? If we think that the Yakinda situation, and it's not because of Yakinda again, but if we think the team is going to be fine, they're going to be operating at a high level, how much can we truly expect to get out of Liquid? I know we're trying to see the future now.
I expect playoffs. I think playoffs.
You expect playoffs?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's where they should be.
Bottom line, yeah.
Yeah. And then
it's not going to be easy. They can play good Counter-Strike, but it's going to be hard games.
True, but because there's teams like Heroic that we didn't talk about that we're not going to go into in depth now. Who else do we put there outside of Euphoria as maybe a team that we can talk about?
It would start being Heroic, but we can do that in the Pick'Ems, I think.
And these teams that are going to be a challenge that's outside of the four teams that were already mentioned. But I think they're not going to have to play all of these teams to get the playoffs. So I think they should do it. Obviously, OC's form has been a bit up and down, more like since Yakindar came in a bit down. And I feel like that's just how he is positioned in the team to some degree. And then I think it's like a 50-50 thing where he gets a little less space. And then he has a little less confidence. Then he like plays a bit worse. Then he doesn't find the space when he has it. So there's been a kind of a negative spiral, I feel, for OC. He isn't awful, but he also isn't doing as well as he was before Yakinder.
So here's my argument against Liquid, and I've been a very big proponent of Liquid and them being a really solid team. They also haven't played FaZe or NAVI.
Yeah, there you go.
They just don't have the greatest record, to be honest. Like they've obviously had some deep runs. They had a good run in Cologne. They've had a good run.
The best team they've beat is Cloud9.
Yeah, they had a couple of like 3 different wins against Cloud9. They beat Heroic, but that was at a time where Heroic were just fresh off a change, I think, and just were a little bit struggling. Like their record is not amazing in terms of the teams that they've beat. So I think that's my concern. When they do go up against the favorites, we've obviously seen that they can beat Vitality. They probably should have beaten Vitality in that final, but they didn't. So like what happens then? Are they going to be able to pull off that miraculous game, that they beat one of the big favorites?
Yeah. Mahone, how do you see these guys?
I think the one thing that Yakinder has definitely added for Liquid is just the ability to kind of grind out games from behind and even just rounds as well. Because I feel like that was something that was missing from Liquid, where it's just like anytime you see them kind of get down in a situation, just like, maybe if they're down 7-2, 9-4 type of thing, or 9-3 rather, it just feels like, oh, it's kind of lost, right? But I think ever since Yakinder has come back, like they're able to kind of grind back into these rounds, and he's been able to kind of add the flavor of VP to this roster as well. Like I can see it in some of their setups sometimes. So I'm like, okay, this is a setup that's been run in Outsiders/VP. So I think that's kind of the overall thing that Yakinder has kind of brought to this team. And as far as performance, you guys make good points about them like not playing against like some of the really tough competition yet, but I just think that they're probably going to sneak into the playoffs. Like I feel like there'd be a 3-2 type of team in that legend stage, just because I feel like they have more belief in themselves whenever they get into these like tough matches and stuff like that.
With
Yeah.
that's like you bang on there, because then they started to become a bit more paid by the round than outsiders
Yep.
for a while there.
Mhm.
And then I think something else that is key that you cannot dismiss is the experience of the trio of Nitro, Naf, and Elige, right? Like these guys have been there, they've done it before, and Elige and Naf are still star level players, right? So you consider the ability that these guys have. We're praising on the other side of things with Magisk, with Apeks, with Dupree, with all of their experience, right? And how that's going to play into an environment like this. Well, the same can be said for the likes of Elige and Naf and Nitro. And it's not like Yakinda hasn't been on a stage before, even though he's of this newer gen. OC's the one who's still warming into this type of an environment here. But like you think this team is strong enough to, if they the same, I want to put it this way, Mo. Do you think like if they're on a heater, like kind of the same way I summarized Vitality, that Liquid could have that miracle event, get the magic, the lightning in the bottle, and win an event like this?
I don't know about winning. I just
Okay.
think that they'll probably just make playoffs.
Okay.
That'd be my guess. If they go further, then I think they're exceeding my expectations at least, because I still don't think like all the pieces are together yet, but they're trending in a really really good direction.
Well, this is the bit here as well, right? Because we discussed at the top, right, kind of like the big storylines and how the main, at least from my perspective, the main one is anything can happen, and then under that, the common thread of FaZe and everything coming off of that. This is the thing, and I feel like I'm becoming a bit more like airy fairy, right? Like I'm not like mega. Because if I was doing analyst, Chad, I just go by the stats. We know this,
course.
right? This is possible to happen, and I'm not going more storyliney because I'm a caster now. I think it's the event as a whole has put me in this position where I remember what it was like when a Magic team from out of nowhere would go on this run, even though we know they can be good, but we didn't expect them to be this good. And they go on this run and it's like, wow, this is crazy. It's fun to watch, right? This event feels like that's the type of event that this is going to happen. We've already established that.
Yeah.
And Liquid are one of the names who are on the short list of potentially being able to lift the trophy. There's plenty of reasons why they won't. There's plenty of reasons why they could. But they're one of the teams that if they do get that lightning in the bottle, I'm thinking, fuck yeah, like this could be mega exciting. Like imagine if Yakinda, Elige, and Naf all just come in, like fucking people up on it. Like that's a sick rifling trio. Like I'm getting excited just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But you need to see it.
The way that I'm kind of like looking, I keep thinking about the major is like picturing a bracket, like a playoffs bracket, and let's say all the big names make it, all the 5 names that we mentioned so far: Vitality, FaZe, Liquid, Navi,
Pretty sick playoffs.
Cloud9, and then let's say there's a heroic in there as well, and like throw out like an IP or whatever it is, one of these like
Give me an
like
outsiders.
legitimate or an outsiders. It doesn't matter, like it really depends on how that bracket pans out in who can get far, like because Liquid obviously have this edge over Cloud9, and then Cloud9 have been pretty good against FaZe, and like some of these like very awkward matchups where they tend to go one way, that could just like shift the bracket entirely, then like one team, just let's say Liquid just have like the quote unquote easier side of the bracket. They have like Cloud9 on their side. They beat Cloud9 in the semifinals. They make it to the final, but then there's the winner of FaZe and Navi waiting for them, and then that's where they lose. That's kind of like how I picture the major, almost like where they can take like there's a lot of names that can beat each other, but we obviously have like those overarching contenders in FaZe and Navi who can probably beat anybody as long as they're good, as long as they turn up in form, But then there's these four different names that could definitely throw a wrench in things, in specific matchups, let's say.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part. All right, do we want to jump into this?
Pick'Em?
Yeah, and then we can continue our thoughts here, guys. I'm not trying to like stifle conversation. If you guys have thoughts about teams as we're going here, we can talk about this as we whack them in. Lucas, are you gonna bring this up for everybody at home to see? I guess you will. We won't be able to see it unless I open the stream. But yeah, I guess if everybody at home has done their pick'em so far, you can play along with us here. I have done mine, but I'm probably going to change them a couple of times here.
I'm actually thinking about changing too.
It's always fun, right? It's always fun. But if you
I
guys
already
don't
put it
know,
on Twitter though, so it's just.
How are we gonna see this? We have to open the.
I'm opening the stream. Yeah.
Okay.
So look, Mahone, have you finished? You've done your pick'ems yet? You making any content around this, man?
I haven't. I honestly, quite honestly, I almost never do pick'ems. I've never done it in my life.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm along for the ride.
the thing with the pick'ems is it's the least about, and this is the bit that I don't like, it's the least about predicting actual matchups of Counter-Strike, which is the fun thing. It's more about just trying to pick which teams are going to keep their head above water here to make it to the next stage. That's why I like when we get to the bracket stage, and it's a little bit more, you're trying to predict actual matchups. But I think we can try and get this one done here. Out of the field, who is the strongest team? This is open for anybody.
I mean,
out of the
should be
teams, I'll read
Vitality,
them out
right?
for the viewer at home. OG Vitality, EG Cloud9, Big, Bad News Eagles, Mouse, 9Z, Gamer Legion, Outsiders, 00 Nation, Furia, Fnatic, IHC, Imperial, and Greyhound. You said who?
Vitality. I mean, it's got to be Vitality, right?
Yeah,
think?
I think so too.
Okay, well, we'll put Vitality in.
Vitality, yeah.
Vitality Cloud9 is just like one of those two for sure.
Those are easy then, Lucas. Put those two in straight away. Vitality, Cloud9, bang, bang. We immediately get into interesting territory, though, as you start to run down this list, right? Because you can start making some crazy conversations for the likes of Imperial, 00 Nation, right? And I won't tack them on with Furia because I think Furia is still like a step here, and then Imperial and 00 Nation.
Right,
And even if we say 9Z, I guess they'll get cheered for if they are playing against someone that is not a Brazilian team.
Full Brazilian team.
But
yeah.
do we think, and this is the intangibles, this is the hard one here, this is another one, this is lightning in the bottom, magic of the event type bullshit. But do we think with the crowd buff, which could also be a debuff, that any of these Brazilian names outside of Furia have the chance of using that hype to get that run? Imperial, we know the magic's there, so
Yeah.
if you wanted to kind of make this conversation, you could.
Look,
I don't think they play good Counter-Strike, so
I actually think the thing is, like, looking at Imperial and looking what they did at the last major and looking at what they did at the RMR, obviously, RMR entirely different competition, and they barely kind of squeaked through over complexity. They maybe even shouldn't have made it, but in that series particularly. But like, it's just difficult to see past the determination and like the aura around the team and how they deal with the pressure, because it doesn't seem to exist for this team whatsoever. That's the thing. Like, the pressure just doesn't seem to exist, and what's on top of it, they're going to have all the positive influence of the crowd and like of that. And of course, like, that's a very subjective thing, and you don't even know if that really necessarily has an actual effect on a team's performance. But there is just this like weird feeling that I get whenever I think about them, that they can just squeak out some of these wins against teams that they probably shouldn't beat on paper, like we saw in Antwerp against Cloud9. That was just like a win that came completely out of left field. Nobody ever expected that to actually happen, and they eliminated Cloud9. So like, that's like, in single games I can see them pull it off. In like single games against teams that they probably shouldn't beat.
Okay, we're going to pivot here quickly because Mahone will be leaving us shortly. Now, as usual, I run over on the show, so this is just what happens, especially when my power goes out. So we'll finish the pick'ems and whatnot, but we got a couple minutes before we say goodbye, Mahone. So first of all, thank you for joining us this evening. Second of all, is there anything that you would like to say? And then third of all, Prof, do you have anything residual that we should ask Mahone before he leaves?
No, it was a lot of fun questions, but nothing that we need to keep him here for. Next time when he comes on the show.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It was a blast. I'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Cool.
Nobody saw that fun.
It was a blast.
All right, take care,
I'm
guys.
glad Lucas is laughing. All right, Mahone, have a good one, mate. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again in the near future, hopefully doing some beautiful little segments for us. Good to have Mahone on the show. Good to hear from him. We'll continue the pick'ems here. We'll continue on here and get this one done. And Dustarino, as the old cliche goes. Lucas, bring that back up when you're ready, and we'll continue tunneling away. Prof, do you want to jump onto what Striker was saying regarding the situation with the Brazilian teams? Do you think that there's, because this is the thing. I read someone in chat that said something like, where is it here? Maybe it's gone too far, but he said something like shitty teams are still shitty teams, like the crowd isn't a magic potion. But I think that's where this kind of gets lost, is the fact that these types of events, other stuff is possible, right?
Gotta mute Mahone.
That's all right. That's Lucas who's got to.
No, it's Mahone.
There you go. Well, sorry, Lucas, you're the fucking producer, mate. What are you talking? What you want us to be moving people around in TeamSpeak now? What else are we gonna do, mate?
I'm in
Gotta
game,
do
man. I'm
everything.
playing Counter-Strike.
Everything.
Man, we gotta do everything around.
Let's move on.
Anyway, did you hear my point?
I have to. You made a point. I'm just gonna go on and say whatever I want to say,
All right,
as classic, as this works on these shows. I had two different kind of thoughts. One, just chaining on to what Striker said about Imperial. Like, yeah, they don't seem convincing, but like, that's how they win almost. Like, they go into submission, and then they like just choke the guy out and like drain
UFC
out
references here.
Yeah. Okay. Like, it goes on and on and on, but they win in the end, right?
Hopefully it goes better than Charles Oliveira, mate.
Whatever that means. And at the RMR, that's how they won all of the games. That doesn't matter that they played against like Team One and the Complexity and whoever they beat before that. That's how they win their games. Essentially, so it kind of doesn't mean anything. I feel for them, it's always going to be if they play against teams that feel the pressure. If they feel the crowd pressure, and if they're a younger team that just feels the major pressure, then they can win against anyone. It
like
doesn't
Mouse,
matter.
let's say, like
but
Mouse,
matchup specific. Like look at the amount of matchups this is possible, Prof.
These kinds of teams, yeah,
there's a lot of matchups.
I feel like it is possible. Definitely, it is possible. Even though on paper you wouldn't say that they're better than half of these teams.
But let me throw these
enough teams to get through.
Let's do the experiment here. I'll throw you the names. So this exact thing we're talking about, guys. This experienced roster of Imperial who can and have proven to be able to grind things out.
Vitality, and they're going to lose that game. They're going to lose
with the crowd first game out the gates.
They're going to
in a best of one.
Game. I feel like they're going to lose that still. Yes.
If there was any reason that Lightning could strike, that'd be it. Game one, first out. I don't know. Are they first game? Where are they in the?
They're in the last game of the day.
Okay, so that's a whole day of anticipation, isn't it?
Not the day, but the first round.
Okay, so middle of the day somewhere. Okay, so let me throw you these names. Greyhound, could they beat him?
Of course.
Yeah. Well, they only have to beat him in a 2-2 match, right? IHC.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Fnatic. Where's the experience on that team other than Crims?
On the edge there, yeah, for
sure. In the 2-2 game, in a best of 3, right? Pressure's high. I'm not going to put Fury there. Not going to say 0-0 Nation. Not going to say Outsiders.
You're not going to say 0-0 Nation?
Well, because they're.
I mean, the record's there, but if anything,
I'm just saying they're a Brazilian team. That's all.
Okay.
I know what we're doing here, but
0-0 Nation, I think there's a.
Like, if it's 0-0 Nation versus Imperial, who cares? We get one of them in the next stage. Okay. You know, at that point, Brazil wins. They celebrate. There's a big party. There's a parade in the street.
But there's still the whole like pressure. You know, they have a lot of young guys on 0-0 Nation. So if that was like, let's say we're just looking at the crowd and the pressure around it, like obviously 0-0 Nation is the team that will crumble under that compared to Imperial.
I don't think 0-0 Nation have lost to Imperial though.
No, not yet. They're just 0-3, I think.
So like maybe that record helps them, but I don't know. Regardless, who else was here that we should be talking about? Gamer Legion in a 2-2 game
for sure.
Yep. 9Z in a 2-2 game. Yep. Mouse in a 2-2 game. Definitely. We've already seen them wet in the bed a little bit. Bad News Eagles in a 2-2 game. Big in a 2-2 game. EG in a 2-2 game. So Imperial can make it.
I actually think like unfortunately this whole challenger stage looks kind of pretty weak. Is that just the feeling I get when I look at these teams?
I mean, I had an easy time going through the pick'ems as well, so that's how it felt to me as well.
Well, I would
see like the top row, like the top 4 teams, you'd probably go through, and then like on my screen, it's Vitality, Cloud9, Outsiders, Furia, and then the rest is like not really convincing yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, let's throw Outsiders in there.
And we can throw Fury on there, I think, right?
I want to say yes. I'm not like I think they should get through this.
I mean, they should. I think they've just been solid.
It'd be the end of this team if they don't.
Yeah, basically.
But I think the thing is, you know, like Astralis aren't here by name value and G2 aren't here at all. Like, and you could imagine if either of these teams were in this stage or the other stage, how that would trickle down. And that's by their own design of losing, right? So you have to win your games. It's pretty easy.
I mean, they could go out like if they have a tough run, you know, if they have a couple of hard matchups, of course. But I mean, I can't make a better case than for them apart from the names that we've already mentioned. So,
so okay, then outside of this, how do we feel about OG?
That was the one I was thinking about for a while, for sure.
Like, the thing is, like, I with a default style of Counter-Strike, if we were played in a vacuum, I would put Mouse in a heartbeat. But the problem I have with Mouse is too many of their big
really
players
unreliable.
go
really
missing,
unreliable.
man.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I mean, the Torji series against Sangal was just really, really bad.
That was hard, wasn't it?
And he's had a couple of those games. Like in general, like he can have amazing games, and he generally does have really solid games. But every now and again, he just suddenly disappears for no apparent reason, and that's like I don't have a lot of faith. Like I put them through in my pick'ems, but then like when somebody told me like imagine they go up against the 0-0 Nation in like a qualifying game, and like these 3 young guys are just like put up against all that.
Is it easier if we try and pick a 0-3 team?
Yeah.
Everyone just going for Greyhound, right? So do we just put Greyhound 0-3?
Put Greyhound there. We had the Ryder par ranking, Literally every single one of us, 11 people who contributed to this power ranking, every single one of us put them as 24.
Okay. Yeah. And that's fair enough.
Even IHC got a couple of 22s or something like that. So like even IHC were kind of like a couple of spots here and there. Greyhound is just like consistently 11 times that number 24.
Greyhound's my 3-0 team, so you know we can really see the juxtaposition between all of this. So we can put Greyhound 0-3, Lucas, whack him in. Okay, and then can we do a 3-0 team? Because this would be where we put one of our fringe teams, right? Who we don't necessarily think are going to be a lock because we want to play this game safe. We were trying to play it safe,
Depends
or
on
we
if
trying
we
to
want to play
win
the game or be reasonable about
this
things.
This is Lucas's account, right? So he is going to change it. This is just for us demonstrating. So
sure. I mean, I would like no, not Imperial.
Well, if I was going to do this like real quick, just off of who should, if I didn't bring in any of the crowd factor,
right? Or do we just put OG 3-0?
I'd put OG. I'd put Mouse. Like I'd put those two teams.
What about Fnatic?
And I'd put Fnatic. That'd be it. That's the teams I have. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And put Gamer Legion as 3-0.
I forgot we're delayed here, so Lucas is.
Yeah, I'm just trying to. I'm trying to catch up, and I don't. Oh, there's Imperial through, right? We talked about.
Well, that's the thing. This is so. Yeah, now that Lucas has got it, so like this here.
Okay.
But we could easily interchange any of these names for an Imperial based off of what we said.
I mean, I'd rather put Imperial as 3-0 than Gamer Legion.
Okay. But they're not going to go 3-0.
But we discussed that they would grind it out.
Vitality is the problem. Yeah, I think
they're not going to go 3-0. That's ridiculous. They're not going to go 3-0.
Is there any team that we think legitimately should go 3-0?
I think I put Cloud9 there because of what we were talking about with their high floor. I think they just don't really have bad matchups apart from Liquid, who aren't here.
Yeah.
So I think I put Cloud9 in my pick exactly because
can they face Vitality? Did anyone look at the
I have it up right now. So just run through these with me quickly, boys. We won't fuck around. We'll do this quick. OG versus Greyhound, OG win. Vitality versus Imperial, Imperial win. EG versus IHC.
EG.
Okay. Cloud9 versus Fnatic.
And just click it. You don't need to read them all. Okay. Just click it how you think. Just let me know.
I can just leave it with the. That's the thing.
Just leave it with the favorites or whatever.
I don't think all the favorites
but it's like high.
It has big over Furia, for example. I don't think. I don't think that's going to happen. I think outsiders will beat Mouse.
Yep.
I think 0-0 Nation might beat Bad News Eagles. I think Gamer Lead. Okay. It's going to be a mess. Like there's so many.
I mean, the second round is like it could be anywhere. So I think it's difficult to tell anyway from the start.
I think Cloud9 3-0. We put Cloud9 3-0 because we have big balls essentially, and we play this game like men.
Okay.
Yeah, I just put Cloud9 3-0 and then Imperial down. I think.
I need some help with the Gamer Legion guys, right? Because I know the in-game leader from Malzahn XT, and I've heard Scrawny say his name. Scrawny said his name Shuhei. I think he said no.
Shuhei, I think is the.
Well, okay, I guess it's close. What say it again?
Shuhei.
Shuhei.
I had a Polish person say it, and it didn't sound anything like any of this.
What was
the guy's name? I don't know. I won't play it now. I don't know which voice message it is.
Honestly, the team that I'm not sold here is Fnatic, even though they did quite well at the RMR. So that's just a me problem, I guess. I don't know. I feel like Gamer Legion kind of deserve a bit more respect with how they played the RMR, but they didn't really play much after it. I don't know. They're kind of my fringe team and a team that I'm excited to see at this event, essentially.
Who?
Gamer Legion.
Okay. Well, this is the thing that I think is exciting about them is the individuals in the team, the ones to get the most excited about are the lad we were just talking about as an in-game leader for the future. Because right now, this is a crude explanation, and I've used it many times before, but I'll use it again. I feel like with the players that he has in his team, right? Like he obviously had A-Core pop off. That was great. But realistically, with the players in that team, we're not looking at that team and going, fuck, there's some crazy names in this team.
No.
But he got a lot of shine for the way he played and the way that he led the team, right? So I don't expect him to come in here and try and bring like a full top tier system. Gamer Legion can make a dent by playing the same type of Counter-Strike with a few extra things added as they did in the RMR and be exciting, right? So I think for them, if they play fun Counter-Strike and they're able to have old mate Shuey playing well, right? I think for him, this is the start of his career because in-game leaders, right, especially those playing in international teams, there could be a lot of hype around him. So
Yeah.
for them, I think the objectives are a little bit different. Like get some close wins in this type of environment. You could get through this stage very well so. But I just want to see more of it because the crude example I was going to give is like checkers versus chess. And I think the teams who consistently play at the high level and the partner teams, and I guess Cloud9 for that matter as well, who are playing against each other and always matching up against each other, are playing a more elevated version of the meta where they like have a kind of set way that everything seems to be approached by most teams. There's a fair understanding that this is how most of us do this, and there's only slight variance. Whereas when teams come in, and that's why we love the open circuit, is the variance is so much higher. And not everybody is making those same percentage decisions that the chess players are making. They're making checkers decisions, but those decisions can still win, right? It's just that the chess players get caught off guard. That's like with the G2 loss, right? For example, like they're coming. There's a lot of reasons you could say, but to go, oh, they're just not as good. I don't know. Like I think if you played those games 10 times, G2 probably would win them more often than they lost them. Like realistically, but they faltered in other areas where Gamer Legion didn't. And I think if this guy can call with some tenacity, right, and have a couple of cool moves in the mix, it's exciting to watch because I was reflecting on this the other day. The type of Counter-Strike and I know the game's shifted a lot. I know the game's a lot harder, but it's still the same situation. You get yourself up to streaks of 5 or 6 rounds with a couple of good calls. In the first 5 or 6 rounds of the game, if you win the pistol, win the force, you win a full eco, you win the first full gun round, which if they're on the CT side won't have all nades or emissions in weapons, and then they're on an eco or a half buy again in the next, that's already 5 rounds, right? You've only had to, you haven't had to do a lot in that period of time. And I think like these teams can definitely do that. And that's what's exciting in the best of ones. So I'm with you there, Prof. I think that'll be an exciting prospect to keep some tabs on. I just want Greyhound to play better Counter-Strike, if I'm going to be honest. That's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for the future for Vexai as a young gun and the type of game that Greyhound are playing, but that's obviously just more of a personal one.
Right.
I don't know who else is mega exciting here. Like the proof will be in the pudding. You know, everybody, we can make a case for like why we might want to order them off the menu. There's a couple of little exciting things about a couple of cool, unique flavors. You know, maybe even just the name of the meal sounds
There's
nice.
Bad News Eagles, you know, that there's definitely like a shout. I'd like just to run through the names that we didn't put through. Like EG, I just don't think we have a lot of faith in general.
Even though they look better, they don't look.
They don't look great. They don't look great.
That good that would put them over, you know, Fnatic or something.
Big
like
are going to play with Sin, so obviously, you know, that's
really
that's
sold.
Not I just put them outside of immediately. Like I just thought that they can, like they've shown like that they can play pretty decent, but I just don't have faith. Bad News Eagles is just like the high variance type team that I could just see beat a lot of the other names, like on a good enough day that I can see them going through over like a mouse, let's say. I could see that happening for sure. 9Z, I don't have a lot of faith in. Gamer Legion, I think are too young. I think that's not going to happen again. Like lightning doesn't strike twice. And then Zero Nation are another name that I was kind of like considering a little bit, just because they are, you know, technically they should be better.
Imperial.
I was going to say they are technically better than Imperial. I just think there's a better chance that they just won't turn up.
Which considering those circumstances we paint it, and that's the hard thing again. And it really sounds like I'm selling Disneyland here, but there is some magic to the majors, right? Like that's always the factor.
And
here,
this one especially just because of this one especially because of the fact that you will enter the major and immediately you will know you are at the major. It's not like the previous times where we're like, okay, this is the first stage.
Playing from
you're
hotel
just
rooms.
playing. Yeah, exactly. You're just playing from like, I mean, fucking Stockholm, right? You're just playing from hotel rooms even at times, you know, and just like it doesn't really feel like you're there yet. It only starts feeling like that once you get to the legend stage and like all the big names are there and like you know kind of like everybody who's there. But like this time you're just gonna enter the arena on the fucking first day, basically, and that's something that we haven't really seen before. So it almost makes it cooler, and that's like an extra thing that we have to take into consideration because like a lot of these people haven't even played in that kind of environment for sure. Like it's just there's so many young guys that have never played in front of a big crowd, and especially like if it's like a Brazilian crowd, you know, that's gonna turn up. That's gonna be crazy. So
and I think here like it's really weird, right? Because a lot of the conversation that we're having right now is take a step back and look at weigh a lot of things, talk about storylines, try and talk about experience, try and talk about real life things, try and talk about the type of Counter-Strike they're playing, try and predict what type of a Counter-Strike they will be playing.
Right.
Try and take into consideration what a Blast Showdown online loss to fucking Astralis is going to mean to Vital. Like we're trying to, we're trying to solve fucking world peace at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's like an impossible task, and there's so many different moving pieces and parts. And I think that's what's cool about this is there's a positive conversation that can be had for most teams. There's a negative conversation that can be had for most teams. And I think just the overall fact that the event is here now in, well, a week, right? It starts in less than a week now. It's next Monday that kicks off. It's just, okay, this is happening. And I don't know if it feels like there's a shifting of anything, but it'll be a new branch, right? Like that conversation before, we've referenced it a couple of times. If FaZe do end up winning here, then we can go this year, 2022, will be referenced in the future as one of the most, and one of the most successful calendar years in terms of the caliber of the events that they had won, right?
Yep.
And then that'll take us down a different path. Okay, who are the other contenders that came out? Were NAVI still able to just be number 2? Did Liquid and Vitality live up to the hype that they got? All of these things are going to be confirmed or denied over the next 3 weeks, right? 4 weeks, whatever it's going to be until we're finished with this on the 13th of November, I believe, right? So this is the fun part. I feel like we've laid a really nice foundation. Like we've covered a lot of different bases. We can't go into everything in crazy detail. And even if we did, you heard from Mahone, they're saying you go up against some teams like NAVI and things are so different that it makes you question your own fucking existence. So these teams with this lead time is going to give us some interesting things to be talking about. And Prof, what is the plan when we're there in Rio on the ground for anything HLTV Confirmed related?
For the confirmed shows, we're doing the off day between groups and playoffs.
Okay.
We're gonna do a show then. Exact time we'll figure it out. We're gonna have a room somewhere in the player hotel, and we're gonna have a setup, a couple of cameras, a couch, and I don't know what else goes into a nice setup. And
maybe a plant, as we've learned this evening.
A plant. We're gonna water it, hopefully. So we're gonna have one big show, like normal show then, and then for the next 4 days, we're gonna have like preview before the day starts. We're gonna have like short 1-hour shows, depending on like maybe we do them a bit longer as we do always. We're gonna have random guests. You're probably gonna be busy sometimes, so it's gonna be me. Sometimes it's gonna be Striker. Sometimes it's gonna be some other HLTV people that are gonna be there. We're gonna try to get as many guests that we can. Probably not gonna be as many, players that are gonna be playing. Maybe we get some managers. We get some people behind the scenes to throw in some cool information. Yeah, and just do kind of previews of the days. And then the plan is also for after everything finishes to have the same setup be used by like Dust2 US and Dust2 Brazil guys. So they're going to do like post-match wrap-ups for a time zone that really suits them more. Everyone's going to be sleeping in Europe at the time. So that's kind of the plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's exciting. That's a lot of stuff for us to keep up for that. I was just in the production call before we came in here talking about all the stuff that's going to be going on. So it all sounds exciting. I'm hoping now that I don't know what it's like in Brazil. I haven't been there in a couple of years, but I'm hoping now that things are in the world seeming a little bit normal as far as the COVID stuff's going, because we know that was still a residual kind of issue in Antwerp. We know it was a big issue in Stockholm. Maybe now things can go back to not everyone being a bit more friendly, but there was definitely a bit more of a decrease in the social side, right? And just talking to people and learning so much off the grapevine. Maybe we return to that. In some forms. I don't know what the whole situation is going to be like, but I got to leave in a couple of days. So I guess you boys are probably leaving in a couple of days too.
I mean, Prop is staying until
for the playoffs. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Fair enough. All right. Fair enough, mate. You can watch from the comfort of your home. The time zones aren't too bad, right? That's another thing that I think has to come up for consideration. Like the match times local. So this is CEST. This is probably for most of our viewers in Europe. Looks like the first games in the Challenger stage are starting at 3 p.m. and we'll finish
like, let's say 2 a.m. ish if things go well.
Yeah. So that's not terrible, actually, considering we're in the Southern Hemisphere on the other side of the world. Yeah. It's actually not that bad. And then as it progresses, what
does it matter what hemisphere we're on?
Well, because
in terms of time zone doesn't.
Well, because it's going to affect. It's obviously going to affect the difference, right, in time.
Not what hemisphere you're on, just the.
The lines, what's it called?
It doesn't look.
Oh, the
we are the
vertical.
same. I was
Yeah,
gonna
You
say,
have,
like,
you have a map behind you.
we are the same.
Yeah,
we are
yeah,
the same
yeah,
time
yeah,
zone as
yeah.
South Africa, man.
You're
Like,
right.
It doesn't matter.
You're right. Yeah. Oh, that's fine. Now I just look like an idiot. And the grand final is on at 7 p.m. That's a good
really
time
good.
as well.
That's a really
and it's
good
a best
one,
of 3. So that's fucking peak time.
Yep.
That's great. That's all good. That's fucking
Yeah, I mean,
wonderful.
the difference is just 5 hours, right? So it's not that bad. It's not even.
Yeah.
You know,
It fucking takes forever to get there. I have an 11-hour flight. But
That is
12.
very confusing. That's just proof that there's something where
the world is flat.
the world is probably flat. Well, how does it take 11 hours to fly to Brazil and it's only a 5-hour difference? Doesn't
Maybe
make
that's
sense,
what we
if you ask
do
me.
once we come back from the major. We get Makalele on the show to discuss how we managed to get there, and there's only a 5-hour time difference.
He never said anything about flat Earth. Just
Didn't he?
No, he just said the thing about the moon landing, which like 50% of the people anyway think is fake. Like, why are people upset about?
I thought he said something about flat Earth.
People just
No, I think people just took
extrapolate it.
Yeah, exactly. I think
Wait,
people
no,
just
he
took it
made
to the
a
next
tweet.
level.
Unless it was unless he was joking. Here's the tweet.
Oh, you found
Here's
it?
the tweet.
Oh, never mind. It's actually him saying your daily reminder that I don't believe the Earth is flat.
There you go.
So
And Jen's like, look, he just said Earth is
he
flat.
doesn't believe
This is
the
how
Earth
people.
flat.
This is how people read. It's
Yeah.
like, it doesn't matter.
I just leave out keywords. It completely changes the sentence.
Crazy how that works.
All right. Are we done?
Yeah.
I guess we're done.
All right. Well, that was fun. I missed half the show. I apologize that the power went out and everything like that went down, but we made it. We're back and everything's good. Okay. Shout out to Mahone, who's no longer with us, but he joined us tonight to talk a bit of Counter-Strike. Thanks to no, he's literally no longer with us. He's with someone else right now. I imagine it could be himself, but he's not with us. Thanks to Lucas for letting us use his pick'ems. That I'm sure he's going to change immediately here. Prof and Striker, as usual, your glowing faces, your positive attitude, your can-do demeanor. It's always touching to me. It's great. We get this week in, week out. It's my injection of what it's like to be an actual adult.
Your occasional disappearances remind us we'd be fucked without you.
Well, I
Thank
do
you.
remember
Thank
that one
you
comment.
for
Can we get the
existing.
comment up? Can we get the comment?
Oh, that
Oh.
one. Oh, yeah, go for it. Go.
Nah,
do
let's
it.
not get the comment. That motherfucker upset me enough, and he doesn't need to know that he upset me. I will live with being upset, and he will live with just writing a comment. All right. Thanks again to the sponsors, Xtrfy, Bitskins, and of course, N1Bet. Gamble responsibly. That's been another episode of HLTV Confirmed. We will see you next time, coming at you live and direct from Rio de Janeiro for the IEM Rio Major. Good night.
Add some fun to your space with Xtrfy, designed in Sweden with focus on quality products built on experience. You're looking at Project 4, their 4th generation of products with super cool colorways to stand out, with matching sets to satisfy with a solid B4 bungee, lightweight ergonomic M4 mouse, the K4 keyboard is fantastic, all of which are performance focused, and finish it off with colorful GP4 mouse mats that are bold in design and smooth on the surface. The retro theme in particular has got the feels. Complete your setup with Xtrfy. No regrets, guaranteed.
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on bitskins.com.
N1Bet. Your bet, your game.